What if I told you that dinosaurs were even weirder than you thought? In 2025, we explored a prehistoric world filled with feathered geniuses, living fossils that survived against all odds, and creatures that looked more like dragons than lizards. We delved into the mystery of the Dracorex and questioned if some dinosaurs were actually smarter than us. This is the 2025 Prehistoric compilation. Let's dig in. T-Rex blood vessels. Jurassic Park incoming? Scientists are bringing back animals from extinction, but is the T-Rex next? If we've learned anything from movies, it's that dinosaur blood will lead to the creation of an island amusement park overrun with dinosaurs created in a lab. The problem is finding that blood. A mosquito in amber isn't gonna cut it, but apparently it's not a problem anymore. What started as a casual scan of a dinosaur's rib turned into one of the most shocking moments in paleontology. Scientists found blood vessels in a fossilized T-Rex. These are actual fossilized remains of the squishy vessels that once carried blood through the body of one of history's greatest beasts. He even has a name. Can you guess it? This T-Rex's name isn't Gargantuar or Savage Rex. His name is Scotty. What Scotty didn't know was that he would be the heavyweight champ of Tyrannosaurus Rexes millions of years after his death. He probably never once considered in all his life that his bones would be strung up in a museum and he'd be hailed as one of the largest of his kind ever born. But before you start imagining Jurassic Park-style resurrections, let's get into the bizarrely cool science behind how a prehistoric brawl, a suspicious X-ray blip, and a nerdy physics lab collided to rewrite what scientists thought they knew about dinosaurs. It began with Jarrett L. Mitchell, a PhD student at the University of Regina. He was scanning Scotty's ribs like it was just another Tuesday in the lab, which it was. He spotted something odd in one of the X-rays, kind of like when you find a French fry at the bottom of the McDonald's bag that isn't supposed to be there, but you're not mad about it. Mitchell shrugged and showed the blip to his supervisors, Dr. Mauricio Barbi and Dr. Ryan McKellar. They took one look and almost squealed with glee. They recognized what they thought could be preserved blood vessels, the holy grail of dinosaur finds. It was a game changer. Quick refresh for those who don't keep a running list of celebrity dinosaurs. Scotty is a massive T-Rex, the largest one ever found, in fact. He was unearthed in the 1990s in Canada. He is also old, about 66 million years old. But apparently, time hasn't been too cruel to this guy. What the researchers found in that X-ray wasn't just a weird fossil glitch. It was evidence of blood vessel structures preserved inside Scotty's rib, likely in a spot where the bone had been healing from a major injury. Maybe a dino street fight, a reptile love triangle gone wrong? We'll never know what happened, other than something smacked Scotty hard enough to leave a mark. If you're wondering how you can scan a dinosaur's rib, I'll tell you, it takes more than a regular office scanner. This job required synchrotron radiation, which is X-rays on steroids. These super-powered X-rays created stunning 3D images of Scotty's bones and revealed a healed fracture with preserved vessel structures woven right into the repair site. After the pictures, the team followed up with chemical analysis to figure out exactly what was inside those vessels. Turned out the dinosaur still had soft tissue, which survived against all the odds for millions of years. This is something that should be impossible and is essentially a miracle of preservation. According to Dr. Barbi, it's groundbreaking, but it's also sheer luck. While the T-Rex's wound was healing, its wound had increased blood flow to it. The rib was fossilized while blood was still rushing in to patch Scotty back together. And voila, a miracle of preservation. And here's where it gets even cooler. By comparing these ancient healing patterns to those in modern-day reptiles and birds, the T-Rex's only surviving family, scientists can start piecing together how healing and biology evolved across millions of years. Understanding dinosaurs helps understand animals still around today. What the blood vessel means going forward is unclear. It's doubtful that one preserved vessel is going to usher in an era of dinosaur cloning in Jurassic Parks, but it is a step in the right direction. And if you want to see Scotty for yourself, just buy a ticket to Canada. Scotty is proudly on display at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. If you've ever seen Scotty, let me know in the comments how it felt to see such a huge skeleton. Definitely on my bucket list. The herbivore with weapons for hands. Forget everything you think you know about dinosaurs. Purge all the stuff you've seen in the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies and open your mind to the newest addition to the Dino Hall of Fame. Because this creature isn't a towering carnivore or a winged terror, it is a plant eater with 2 massive claws, an ostrich-like face, and what scientists are calling a grasping specialist. I bet you can't wait to find out what a grasping specialist is. If salad tongs came to life and took on the form of a dinosaur, they would be Deinonychus tsoktsbatari, the newest Cretaceous behemoth to rock the world. This strange new dinosaur, unearthed in Mongolia's fossil-stuffed Gobi Desert, is a one-of-a-kind species within the bizarre family of therizinosaurs, a group of theropods famous for looking like evolution took a wrong turn and just kept going. Most therizinosaurs had 3 claws. Deinonychus only had 2, making it an anomaly on the family tree. But oh boy, did it commit to the role. These weren't your run-of-the-mill talons. The claws were nearly a foot long and bigger than the actual finger bones underneath, which sounds less like biology and more like a prehistoric anime character design. The result was a dinosaur with 2 massive slicing hooks and the body of a 570-pound feathered tree hugger. Researchers think the claws were anything but for show. They were probably excellent tools for grasping vegetation, digging, defense, or, let's be real, dressing up as Freddy Krueger for Dino Halloween. This oddball was discovered in the Bayan Shiri Formation in Mongolia, a region that might as well be called the Cretaceous Louvre. Seriously, UNESCO dubbed the Gobi Desert the world's richest dinosaur fossil reservoir, and this only adds to its prestige. If you want to go dinosaur hunting, you have got to do it in Mongolia. You're practically guaranteed to walk away with some, though I'm not sure you're allowed. So if you try to leave with a dinosaur, you might end up in Mongolian jail. Just a fair warning. Deinonychus lived during the late Cretaceous, sometime between 100.5 and 66 million years ago, which puts it in the dramatic final chapter of the dinosaur era, right before the big space rock came knocking. Scientists didn't just find fossilized bones, they also uncovered a keratinous sheath on one of the claws. That's the prehistoric equivalent of finding fingernails still attached. This sheath, made of the same stuff as your own fingernails, helped protect the claws and likely made them even deadlier. This is very cool since it is the first time that keratin has ever been confirmed on a therizinosaur claw, which is the kind of paleontological mic drop that gets researchers very, very excited. Now for the pop culture throwdown. You may have already seen this family of dinosaurs in Jurassic World Dominion. The Therizinosaurs starred in one scene as a long-clawed menace that looked like Edward Scissorhands decided to cosplay as Big Bird. Deinonychus, though, is even weirder. It was smaller, possibly fluffier, and rocked a dual-claw setup that made it look halfway between a salad chef and a sword fighter. According to Dr. Darla Zelenitsky, study co-author and dino expert at the University of Calgary, these creatures were downright awkward looking. But hey, it couldn't help itself. Evolution was experimenting. North America's flying terror. What's small enough to sit on your shoulder, delicate as a soap bubble, and older than all your grandparents combined, going back to the days of cave people and Neanderthals? That would be Eotephrodactylus mcintyre, a freshly discovered pterosaur that just shattered records as the oldest known flying reptile in North America. She may have been the size of a seagull, but this little ash-winged goddess just dropped a bombshell 209.2 million years in the making. And it's all thanks to just one jawbone, a really fragile one. It's the kind of fossil that looks like it would break if you sneeze near it. Paleontologist Ben Kligman found himself squinting at the thing under a microscope at the Smithsonian, cycling through his mental Rolodex of Triassic jawlines like he was trying to match a Tinder profile from the late Triassic period. Is this a pterosaur, he wondered, or maybe a mammal? It was a perfectly reasonable question given where the fossil was found. It was dug up at Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park from a dig site that is basically the Costco of ancient bones. Even some seasoned experts thought it might have belonged to a mammal since there are so many different types of fossils at the park. And did I mention the bone is about the size of a baby carrot? Not the easiest thing to study. Kligman, stubborn as a mule, started comparing the jaw's shape, its teeth, and its weird little details to the usual suspects of Triassic animal anatomy. One by one, he ruled them out until finally the light bulb went off. Yes, the jawbone belonged to a pterosaur. All of Kligman's stubborn studying paid off in the end. The name of this new creature sucks to try to pronounce, but so do most dinosaur names, to be fair. The meaning behind the name, though, is kind of awesome. Eotephrodactylus means ash-winged dawn goddess in English. So with this kind of name, you would think it would be a huge dragon, not a tiny dino that could perch on your shoulder like a parrot. Ben Kligman was the guy who identified the jawbone, but he wasn't the one who found it. The other half of the creature's name, McIntyre, comes from Susan McIntyre, the volunteer at the Smithsonian's Fossil Lab, who found the jawbone while sorting through 1,200 fossils. For 18 years, McIntyre worked behind the scenes, painstakingly cleaning and cataloging the kind of stuff most people wouldn't look twice at. One day, she came across a tiny jaw with its teeth still intact, and so she flagged it. Then Ben came along to make the connection between the bone and the ancient animal that owned it. But enough of this scientific yakking. What was this dinosaur like in real life? It was like a little pocket dragon. She was a close cousin of dinosaurs, but not technically a dinosaur herself. It's easy to call pterosaurs dinosaurs since they lived at the same time, were scaly, and looked like winged lizards, but they were different. Pterosaurs were the first vertebrates to evolve powered flight, which is nerd speak, for they didn't just fall with style like Buzz Lightyear, they really flew in the air, propelled by their wings. And some of them grew to be huge. But not our new friend. Kligman described her as small enough to sit on your shoulder, like a seagull. Which makes me have to ask, is this guy a seagull whisperer? Who has seagulls landing on their shoulders? Researchers dated the fossil to 209.2 million years ago. That level of accuracy is pretty rare, and it's all thanks to the thick layers of volcanic ash where the jaw was found, which acted as Mother Nature's version of a time capsule. The dating puts our little ash-winged heroine smack dab in the middle of the late Triassic, just before Earth hit the reset button with the end Triassic extinction. This was a mass extinction event that wiped out lots of competitors and cleared the runway for dinosaurs to rise from the ashes. Since I mentioned it, I might as well give you a snapshot of this extinction event. It destroyed an estimated 34% of all marine life, while on land, all known reptiles except for dinosaurs and pterosaurs, and crocodilomorphs, which crocodiles are literally invincible. Since everyone except crocs, dinos, and flying reptiles were wiped out, these three families were able to become the dominant land animals on the planet for the next 135 million years. They were like the three crime families taking over New York after killing off the competition. And if you want to know how the end Triassic extinction was triggered in case it happens again, that's easy. It was volcanoes. Enough volcanoes erupted at the same time that the Earth experienced global warming on a level we can't even imagine. It was so bad that immense amounts of toxic mercury leaked into the environment while the oceans turned into bubbling acid. Okay, enough doom and gloom. Our new pterosaur friend's tiny, overlooked jawbone just rewrote a whole chapter of paleontology. It took a sharp-eyed volunteer, a persistent paleontologist, and a fossil no thicker than your pinky to prove that North America's oldest flying reptile was awesome. And now for a quick break, because it's shout-out time. I want to give a big thank you to Joel Smith and Mike Jacobs for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out. The dinosaur that came back from the dead. Just when you thought dinosaur discoveries couldn't get any wilder, a new species crashes the party without even needing a single surviving bone. A new species has been identified without scientists touching a single fossil. This monster dino didn't come roaring out of the dirt, it came strutting out of an old photo. Its bones were destroyed during World War II, because war is not good for preserving stuff. Meet Tamaryraptor markgraffi. a 33-foot-long apex predator from ancient Egypt who spent 95 million years extinct, another 75 years thought to be lost, and is now making headlines thanks to wartime photographs. In 1914, a team of German scientists unearthed some seriously intimidating fossilized bones. They were found in Egypt's Bahariya oasis, a lush prehistoric paradise in the middle of what is now desert. These remains ended up at the Bavarian State Collection for Paleontology and Geology in Germany. Then came World War II. In 1944, a bombing raid reduced the museum building to rubble, taking Tamaryraptor's bones with it. And just like that, poof, one of the largest carnivores to ever walk the earth was lost to history. Or so scientists thought. Fast forward to today, a team of researchers from the University of Tübingen were digging through some dusty shelves full of old photographs when they stumbled upon never-before-seen images of the destroyed fossils. At first, doctoral student Maximilian Kellerman thought, maybe these are just photos of the well-known Carcharodontosaurus fossils. Then he looked closer and nearly fell off his chair. There were horns. There was an enlarged frontal brain. There were all kinds of skeletal quirks that didn't match anything previously labeled as Carcharodontosaurus, the giant meat-eating dinosaur family to which the fossils had been mistakenly assigned for over a century. Kellerman realized the photos were showing the fossils of an unidentified species of dinosaur. He was about to make history. First off, let's break down the name. Tamari comes from Ta-Meri, the ancient Egyptian name meaning promised land. The second half of the name is raptor, which is Latin for thief, because all raptors are little menacing thieves. The final part of the name, Markgraffi, is in honor of Richard Markgraf, the fossil collector who first dug up the bones in 1914. Suffice to say, Richard has been gone for quite some time. If he were still alive, he'd be over 110 years old. So there you have it. Now you're acquainted with the thief from the Promised Land, a predator that would have given T-Rex some serious competition. In paleontology, naming a new dinosaur species without having a physical fossil to poke and prod is borderline taboo. But this wasn't just any fossil. This was a fossil that had been documented, described, and destroyed under extraordinary circumstances. The study author said this is an exceptional case. And they're right. This is exceptional. The discovery doesn't just give us a new dino to obsess over like 8-year-old you with a new dinosaur coloring book. It cracks open the door to what might be a far richer prehistoric world than scientists ever imagined in North Africa. Egypt, land of the pharaohs, home of the pyramids, keeper of secrets and eternal wisdoms. Buried deep beneath the sand, next to lost tombs and forgotten mummies, are more dinosaur fossils than you can imagine. Scientists have found dinosaur species like Deltadromeus and the famously aquatic Spinosaurus in the sandy regions of Egypt and Morocco. With Tamaryraptor bursting onto the scene, that's yet another giant carnivore that prowled what is now the Sahara. North Africa was teeming with strange, sharp-toothed behemoths, and scientists are only now cluing into that fact. They've barely scratched the surface and have many, many more discoveries ahead of them. The Dinosaur Highway. Some discoveries rewrite history. This one rewrites prehistory. So, a guy is digging up clay in a quiet English quarry when he stumbled on some bumps in the rock. Probably thinks he's hit a few buried bricks or something. Yeah, right. Turns out he has unearthed the prehistoric equivalent of a 4-lane highway for dinosaurs. Ladies and gents, meet the world's first known Dinosaur Highway. It's a sprawling network of nearly 200 dinosaur footprints uncovered in June 2024 at Dewars Farm Quarry in Oxfordshire. It's now officially the largest dinosaur track site ever discovered in England, and it's giving scientists the kind of giddy excitement usually reserved for people who find winning lottery tickets under their couch cushions. The track site, dated to a mind-bending 166 million years ago, sits right in the Middle Jurassic period, back when England wasn't foggy and rainy, but hot, tropical, and crawling with giants. The stars of this prehistoric foot parade are some of the most famous dinosaurs around. 4 of the major trackways were made by sauropods, massive, long-necked plant eaters like Brontosaurus. These guys were the double-decker buses of the Jurassic, stretching over 60 feet long. Another star of the show is Megalosaurus, a 30-something foot long predator with claws so sharp you would think it was auditioning to replace Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Megalosaurus also holds the honor of being the first dinosaur ever named by science, way back in the 1820s, before the word dinosaur even existed. And here are its tracks, just sitting pretty in a random spot in England. 166 million years, and this animal's tracks haven't aged a day. Awesome, right? Professor Kirsty Edgar of the University of Birmingham feels the same way. Kirsty said this is more than just fossilized feet. These footprints offer a snapshot, an actual moment from the life of these animals. Animals that nobody will ever see again, unless, science allows us to bring them back from the dead one day. Professor Richard Butler, paleobiologist and professional time travel translator, explained it rather eloquently, saying that when you find footprints, you're not just learning what the dinosaurs looked like, you're also learning how they moved, how fast they walked, how they behaved, and maybe even who was chasing whom. Especially when a predator's track crosses right over a sauropod's tracks, let's say. Awkward. Now, if you're wondering how a few footprints survived millions of years when your own beach tracks vanished before lunch, here's the secret. Professor Butler explained that shortly after the dinosaurs left these tracks, a storm likely swept in and buried them with a thick layer of sediment, which locked them in place like a prehistoric time capsule filled with wet putty. This type of perfect preservation happens maybe once every 1,000 years, if you're lucky. But in England, it seems to have happened a lot in the same spot. The team behind this discovery was more than 100 people strong. A small army of scientists used drones, digital imaging, and 3D modeling to snap over 20,000 high-res images. They have since created full 3D reconstructions of the trackways so that scientists and curious dino enthusiasts at home can analyze every step in microscopic detail. Science has come quite a ways from the days of shovels and comically small brushes. Just like modern highways tell you who's commuting, speeding, or just stuck in traffic, these ancient tracks might tell scientists who was eating, who was being eaten, and who just wanted to mind their own business. If you're in the UK, you'll soon be able to see these Jurassic prints in person at a new Oxford University Museum of Natural History exhibit. Or you can see them from the comfort of your own couch, courtesy of the BBC's new Digging for Britain. What if dinosaurs never left? How would you like to go back 66 million years to a time when T-Rexes ruled the globe, Triceratops were basically living tanks, and hadrosaurs were the quacking, plant-powered giants of the late Cretaceous? Sounds like fun, right? But what if you didn't have to go back in time to see these cuddly characters? What if they were still alive right now? A new study just dropped like a meteor of truth in the journal Current Biology. It turns out dinosaurs weren't in some slow-motion extinction spiral like scientists have been telling us for years. Scientists tried to insist that dinosaurs were already on their way out through the back door and into Extinction Alley when the asteroid hit like a cosmic sucker punch. The research team, which included paleontologist Alfio Alessandro Chiarenza, dove into the nearly 8,000 fossil records from North America, specifically from the Campanian and Maastrichtian ages from 83.6 to 66 million years ago. Are you with me? They focus on 4 big-name dinosaur families. One is Ankylosauridae. These herbivores were armored tanks with tails that could crush a car. Another is Ceratopsidae. These were horn-faced royalty like Triceratops and all other tops derivatives like Utaceratops and Titanoceratops. There are a lot of these guys running around with big old horns. Another is Hadrosauridae, the family of duck-billed wackos who probably got made fun of by the other dinosaurs. And finally, Tyrannosauridae, the iconic T-Rex squad. Now, I'm telling you all this because on paper, it looked like dino diversity peaked around 76 million years ago and then took a nosedive right before the asteroid hit. But the deeper the researchers dug, the more they realized something was off. It seems the issue is the Maastrichtian age, that final stretch before impact. It had horrible fossil preservation conditions. It was just the worst. Imagine trying to piece together a crime scene from a pile of ashes and a soggy sock. During this age, hardly anybody ended up as a fossil. So, scientists mistakenly assumed that dinosaur diversity was in decline. But it wasn't. Not to worry, I've got a scapegoat. We can blame the Earth for this error. Because around 75 million years ago, the Western Interior Seaway, a giant inland ocean that once split North America in half, started to peace out. At the same time, the Rocky Mountains decided it was time for a growth spurt. Environments changed, rivers shifted, sediment layers got all messed up, and good fossilization spots vanished. The fossil records start to make a lot more sense once you take all of this information into consideration. For example, among the 8,000 fossil records from this age, ceratopsians and their horned heads were found most often, probably because they lived on open plains where fossils had a better chance of being preserved. Hadrosaurs, on the other hand, were more elusive. These duck-billed dinos loved rivers, but rivers had dried up and shifted, so they weren't able to be fossilized in their usual environments. It's like they were the indie band that no one heard of because their records never got pressed. Only in this case, their bones never got pressed. Chiarenza said that dinosaurs were probably not inevitably doomed to extinction at the end of the Mesozoic era. If it weren't for that bully of an asteroid, they might still share this planet with mammals, lizards, and their surviving descendants, birds. So no, dinosaurs weren't weak, fading relics when the asteroid came. They were still stomping around, thriving and doing their thing. But do you think if dinosaurs never went extinct that we'd even be here today? Think about it and get back to me. A sea monster, a family legacy, and a final triumph. It was a day like any other on beautiful Vancouver Island, and Mike Trask was out with his daughter, 12-year-old Heather, exploring the beautiful wilderness. As they moved along a riverbank, they stumbled upon something weird. It was sticking out of the bank like a chunk of driftwood. Only it had teeth. Big, nasty, prehistoric teeth. Mike and his daughter didn't know it at the time, but they had just found a sea monster that's been dead for 85 million years. This amazing discovery isn't exactly recent. Let me tell you, Mike and his daughter found the bones in 1988, but it wasn't until now, decades later, that scientists finally named the mysterious monster. They did it just days after Mike tragically passed away. But don't despair, because scientists did something truly special to honor Mike. They named the creature Trascasaura sandrae after him. He had accidentally discovered a whole new genus of marine reptile that day, but it wasn't until his death that scientists confirmed it. They now know that Trascasaura sandrae was a creature so fierce, it's practically grinning in its fossilized photo like it's daring you to swim near it. It's saying, "Go on, get near my teeth. I totally won't eat you, I promise." What Mike and Heather found on that fateful day over 35 years ago on the shores of Puntledge River was the remains of a 36-foot-long marine reptile with teeth that looked like nature's version of a bottle opener. The bones were eventually displayed at the Courtney Museum and Paleontology Center, where Mike's twin brother, Pat Trask, happens to be the curator of natural history. The fossil was cool and mysterious, but also misidentified. In the 80s, Canadian scientists labeled it an elasmosaur, a type of long-necked plesiosaur, but something didn't quite fit. For over 3 decades, paleontologists scratched their heads. They knew they had something special, but the fossil was too weathered, too corroded, and too frustratingly incomplete to confirm its identity. The mystery remained unsolved until 2020, when Pat Trask struck gold. Not literally, but in paleontology terms. He found a better preserved fossil of the same animal right in the same Vancouver Island region. It was the discovery of a lifetime. Now, with 2 high-quality specimens in storage, scientists could finally determine what sort of animal it really was. Elasmosaur or some other marine nightmare? Maybe something entirely new. 4 years went by with scientists locked deep in their studies, squinting into their microscopes like monks trapped in caves while studying illuminated manuscripts. Then, paleontologist F. Robin O'Keefe of Marshall University published a paper confirming what the Trasks had already known. Mike had found something amazing. Truly, truly amazing. Trascasaura was not an elasmosaur after all. It is a brand new genus. Not just a new species, but a whole new branch on the Plesiosaur family tree. What makes this aquatic cretin so different from other marine monsters is its teeth. This animal came equipped with heavy, sharp, robust teeth ideal for crushing, which makes you wonder what kind of horrifying shellfish or armored sea creatures it was snacking on. And it had enough weird skeletal features that made it very unlike other plesiosaurs. It appears to have been stronger, meaner, and bulkier. It was the kind of sea beast that didn't chase you, but waited for you to come close and then crunch you like a walnut. Locals are so obsessed with this dinosaur-age sea monster that the province of British Columbia made Traskosaura their official fossil emblem. Way to go, Mike! Sadly, Mike Trask died on May 15, 2024, just 8 days before the study naming Traskosaura was published. His daughter Heather, who shared the original discovery with him, passed away previously in 2023. It's pretty sad all the way around. Thankfully, though, both of their names are now etched into scientific history. A shared moment between a father and daughter on a riverbank nearly 40 years ago will forever live on in the name Traskosaura. And for that, you've got to respect the scientists who named the creature. When asked about the naming of the animal, Pat Trask had to hold back his emotions lest they burst through like a water balloon full of tears. He managed to get out 2 words: big legacy. What would you do if you found a dinosaur skeleton? Let me know in the comments. The Edward Scissorhands dinosaur of Mongolia. Scientists have just found a mysterious new dinosaur thanks to huge 2-fingered claws. This giant lizard could easily star in Edward Scissorhands 2, Dinosaur Hair Day. Because if you thought that dinosaurs were all just giant lizards with teeth and attitude, you need to check yourself. Paleontologists just dug up a prehistoric oddball from Mongolia's Gobi Desert that looks like the love child of a sloth, a giraffe, and Edward Scissorhands. Introducing to the world Duonicus tukbatari. It's tall, it's clawed, it's amazing, and it had only 2 fingers per hand, which must have made it really easy to flip other dinosaurs the bird. A Cretaceous claw. Researchers hit paleontological pay dirt when they unearthed a nearly complete claw, keratin sheath, and everything. For anyone not up on their fossil vocab, the keratin sheath is like the fingernail part of the claw. It's the same material that your fingernails and the hair on your head is made out of. And it almost never survives fossilizations because normally keratin decomposes faster than your gym motivation in February. But this one is perfectly preserved, like it time traveled from the late Cretaceous in bubble wrap. So when scientists found a claw with the keratin sheath still intact, you can bet their minds were blown. David Hone, a paleontologist at Queen Mary University of London, called a complete keratin sheath like this almost unheard of. This perfectly preserved sheath could help scientists understand the relationship between a dinosaur's bones and its claws. Darla Zelenitsky, a paleontologist at the University of Calgary, added that the creature's claw was nearly a foot long. Forget Edward Scissorhands. This thing was more like the prehistoric version of a Freddy Krueger glove. Scientists were so impressed by the claw that they named the dinosaur Duonicus, which translates from Greek as 2 claws. You might also like to know that this dinosaur was pretty tall. It stood about 10 feet at the shoulders and weighed in at a solid 573 pounds. It also most likely strutted around the Cretaceous countryside, looking like a bizarre cross between a feathery nightmare and a medieval gardening tool. What did it do with those claws? What does a dinosaur do with only 2 fingers? It's like trying to figure out what a T-Rex did with those goofy little arms. Nobody knows. But scientists are pretty sure that Duonicus's claws weren't just for show. Darla Zelenitsky and her team say the claws were perfect for grasping tree branches up to 4 inches thick. They were ideal for plucking leaves like a salad-loving velociraptor. And while Duonicus wasn't a predator, those claws could absolutely throw down if needed. They weren't killers, said Zelenitsky, but if something messed with them, yeah, they could handle business. You could call them vegetarians with anger issues. They use their 2 clawed fingers to munch on yummy leaves, and if something big and scaly bothered them, they'd use their monster claws to, eviscerate and whatnot. The terrifying Therizinosaur. You may already be somewhat familiar with Duonicus tsogbatari without even knowing it. This creature belongs to the larger family of Therizinosaurs. Paleontologist Steve Broussat once called Therizinosaurs the Edward Scissorhands of dinosaurs. Why? Because most of them had freakishly long claws for gardening. And by gardening, I mean eating plants. These were huge monstrosities that looked like oversized chickens with barbecue tongs as long and sharp as samurai swords for fingers. Therizinosaurs must have been very successful dinosaurs because they lived in Asia, Europe, and North America, dominating a massive part of the globe as giant herbivores. The largest known therizinosaur was the kingly named Therizinosaurus, clocking in at an impressive 33 feet long and 11,000 pounds, while the smallest were only about 7 feet long, still not too shabby. As you can tell, they were extremely diverse animals, just like dogs or birds, and they all had claws that could absolutely tear your face off. Oh yeah, and I should mention they were feathered. These things looked like Big Bird's cousin who was rejected from Sesame Street. Too scary. So to recap, dinosaurs were way stranger than we ever imagined. If nature can invent a two-fingered sloth dino with barbecue claws, it probably has even weirder stuff left to show us. And Mongolia's Gobi Desert is the VIP lounge of prehistoric weirdness. What you choose to do with all this information is up to you. You'll probably forget until the next time you're at a cookout clicking the tongs together. Then you'll remember the weird claws of Duonicus tsogbatari. Behold the lizard worm king. If evolution ever had a weird moment, this is it. The creature I'm about to introduce you to is a giant worm lizard that crushed snails and snacked on them like popcorn while looking like it just crawled out of the pages of Dune. Its name is Pterostodontosaurus marcello-sanchezi, a mouthful that's easier to say if you don't overthink it. I'll just call him Terra M for short. If not, it's going to be a long video. It was a jaw-crushing, snail-smashing, surface-dwelling worm lizard from 50 million years ago. Scientists just uncovered this beast in Tunisia's Djebel Chambi National Park, and it is rewriting everything they thought they knew about a group of creatures most people don't even know existed. What is a worm lizard? Worm lizards are real. I'm not making it up because it sounds cool. They are scientifically known as amphisbaenians. I think I said that right. Categorized as legless reptiles that typically live underground. They have no legs, but they aren't snakes. These days, amphisbaenians hardly grow bigger than a pencil. But 50 million years ago, they were huge, probably bigger than your dog. Our friend Terra M grew over 3 feet long, had a large skull, and hunted above ground like some prehistoric feral tube sock with murder in its heart. 3 feet isn't that big, but it's still pretty enormous for a lizard with no legs. And its resemblance to the sandworms from Dune is no joke. Lead researcher Georgios Georgalis said, visually, you can imagine the animal as a sandworm from the Dune science fiction novels and their movie adaptation. No legs, massive body, bone-crushing jaws, and more than anything, a deep hatred of snails. It was the doom noodle of the Eocene period, and it wasn't shy about it. After all, why would you be shy when you've got teeth like a pit of spikes? This creature had thick enamel, the kind you evolve when your life goal is to crack snail shells like pistachios. I told you, it had a deep-rooted hatred for all snails. I don't know why, I just know it did. The research team said that based on the tooth structure and the unusually thick enamel, they can deduce that the worm lizard had enormous muscle strength in its jaws. It was small, but it bit down with the force of an angry pit bull who took way too many steroids. A giant among worm lizards. Terra M now holds the title of the largest worm lizard ever found, dead, alive, or extinct. Remember that the next time you play Trivial Pursuit. It also completely breaks the mold of what worm lizards are supposed to be. While its modern relatives in the Trogonophid family are tiny, shy, and spend their lives in the dirt, this beast slithered across the surface world like it owned the place. And judging by its bite, it probably did. Its fossil remains, mostly jaws and vertebrae, were found in a range of sizes, suggesting this wasn't just a one-off freak. There were more of them. Maybe a whole population of these chunky horror noodles slithering around 50 million years ago. Some were big, some were even bigger. Okay, everyone, sleep tight. Don't let the worm lizards bite. But seriously, why so big? Scientists are blaming the weather. According to Krister Smith from the Senckenberg Research Institute, this jumbo worm size may have been linked to the Eocene period's warmer climate, because when the Earth is heated up, everything just sort of gets bigger. The hotter the planet, the larger the monsters, especially the reptiles. In the end, Terra M is a testament to the weird and wonderful ways that evolution works. It took a family of tiny, harmless burrowers and, for a brief moment in time, turned one of them into a gigantic, snail-smashing predator. It's a jaw-dropping discovery that reminds us to never underestimate the creatures slithering right under our feet. Silent Ninja Sea Reptile. 183 million years ago, the oceans were teeming with danger. Giant marine reptiles roamed the depths like prehistoric submarines. And then, silent as a shadow, a predator almost 40 feet long slipped into the darkness, unseen and unheard. Right up until its enormous jaws closed around its victim. But the ocean is kind of like space, in the sense that nobody can hear you scream. Welcome to the underwater horror movie starring Temnodontosaurus, a Jurassic marine reptile that was the original stealth predator, using silence to hunt in the abyss. A flipper of a discovery. This underwater ninja was identified thanks to one fossilized flipper. A flipper so unique that it showed never-before-seen adaptations in a marine reptile. Discovered by German fossil collector George Goltz in a roadside ditch, the flipper clearly came from a type of ichthyosaur, a diverse group of sea monsters who were sort of like the tyrannosaurs of the seas. But even among ichthyosaurs, Temnodontosaurus was a beast. This is not your grandma's fish fossil. Researchers from Lund University, the University of Manchester, and a few other institutions found soft tissues still preserved on the flipper. That is just insane. Researchers today flip out when they find soft tissue on a mammoth bone from 20,000 years ago. This is a monster's flipper from 183 million years ago. Soft tissue is unprecedented. The flipper also boasts a zigzagging trailing edge, similar to the serrated flight feathers of owls. And it has rod-like internal structures called chondroderms, unique to this animal. All of these features point to one thing. This ancient predator evolved to move silently through water, just like owls do through the air today. Ever notice how owls fly silently while other birds like crows make a loud whooshing noise when they fly? Our flippery friend did the same thing in the water. Dr. Johan Lindgren, the study's lead author, explained it in simple terms, saying, the flipper's wing-like shape and scalloped edges suppressed noise. In other words, it was built for ghost mode. This thing was the stealth jet of the seas. Hunting in prehistoric seas. Temnodontosaurus was a predator the size of a bus and could sneak up on prey without making a sound, like an electric vehicle. It likely hunted in low light, either at night or deep underwater. Combine its ultra-silent flippers with eyes the size of cantaloupes, and you've got the marine version of Batman, except fishier, and without the tragic backstory. Okay, never mind. Anywho, Dr. Dean Lomax, ichthyosaur expert and co-author, said he's examined thousands of ichthyosaurs and never seen anything like this. The flipper George found has features that don't exist in any known marine animal, alive or extinct. It's just like with the giant worm lizard. Here you've got an ichthyosaur, which scientists are quite familiar with, but it has features never seen before on any animal. It's a total anomaly, as unique as you are yourself. Studying the flipper. To examine the fossil, scientists brought in every trick from the science toolbox. They used synchrotron X-ray microtomography, time-of-flight secondary ion mass spectrometry, infrared microspectroscopy, and computational fluid dynamics modeling. Phew. In this case, I think you actually do need to be a rocket scientist to know these terms. It's the same tech you'd expect from a NASA Black Ops mission, but on a fossil found in a pile of roadside dirt. All the tests were worth it because they proved what I already told you, being that the monster, despite its hulking size, used hydrodynamic silence as its hunting strategy, something that no other known marine animal ever did. This beast could outhunt sharks, squids, whales, and every creepy fish in the sea. But what's really weird is that the underwater ninja might help with a very modern problem: noise pollution. Dr. Lindgren said that understanding how Temnodontosaurus reduced swimming noise could inspire technology to reduce the acoustic assault caused by ships, sonar, and offshore wind farms in use today. The fossil of a sea monster, a literal sea monster bigger than most boats, could be the missing ingredient needed to make modern ships quieter, which in turn helps marine life. For fish, boats driving across the surface is like living in the basement suite of a rock band. Just endless noise. The first ichthyosaur. Care for a fun fact? The very first ichthyosaur ever described by science, found over 200 years ago by legendary fossil hunter Mary Anning, was also a Temnodontosaurus. How do you like them apples? While this isn't technically a new species, finding its flipper has revealed a lot of new information about it. But the truth remains that Temnodontosaurus was found in the 1800s by a woman who was a pioneer in paleontology, a profession that would come to be dominated entirely by men. So the next time someone tells you that evolution peaked with the cheetah or the peregrine falcon, tell them about Temnodontosaurus, the silent sea assassin with night vision and noise-canceling fins. Nature built a ninja 183 million years ago, and scientists are just now catching up. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to John Ravazzini and Melis Martinez for supporting this channel. I really appreciate the feedback and I'm glad you're enjoying the new style. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. 66 million-year-old yuck. Of all the relics to surface from the age of the dinosaurs, this one is definitely memorable and kind of gross. I'm sure you'll love it. Found in the chalky cliffs of Stevens Klint, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Denmark, and apparent prehistoric puke hotspot, an ancient upchuck is making waves in the science world. Researchers uncovered a chunk of animal vomit from the era of the dinosaurs. All those years ago, some ancient creature had one too many cocktails and lost their lunch. And somehow, the lunch turned into a fossil. That's more than most of us can say for our unwanted expulsion juices. The fossil geeks. The man behind this stomach-churning discovery is Peter Benicke, a self-proclaimed fossil geek with a keen eye and a strong stomach. While poking around the coastal cliffs of eastern Denmark, Benicke spotted some fragments that didn't quite belong. They looked like bits of sea lily, those frilly underwater creatures that are distant cousins of starfish and sea urchins. But instead of being spiky, star-shaped things with rough skin, sea lilies look like paper flowers. On closer inspection, Peter realized these fragments could be sea lilies, but they looked partially digested. They seemed to be all clumped up in the rock and looked sort of messy. He had never seen a fossil quite like it in all his years of scanning seaside cliffs for old bones and prehistoric starfish relatives. Now, Peter wasn't about to diagnose this prehistoric barf solo. So he did what any responsible fossil enthusiast would do. He took it to the Museum of East Zealand. That's where Jesper Milan, a paleontologist and museum curator who clearly loves his job, confirmed that yes, this was indeed fossilized regurgitation from the tail end of the Cretaceous period. In other words, this puke was from the very end of the dinosaur saga. The asteroid was hurtling towards Earth. Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops were stomping about like they owned the place, not a care in the world. And then someone barfed. And shortly after, the asteroid went boom, and the dinosaurs went adios. The ancient vomit. If you're wondering what kind of creature expelled this chunk of nastiness, you're not alone. Scientists also want to know how this ancient snack mishap happened. And Milan thinks he's got a theory that makes sense. According to Milan, it's likely that a fish, or maybe even a shark, chowed down on some sea lilies. Problem is, sea lilies are basically nature's fiber supplement. They are hard to digest and full of gritty bits. So the predator did what you do after eating one too many tacos at 2 a.m. It hurled. And those regurgitated remains, full of sea lily skeletons and chalky bits, got fossilized over time. And while I know vomit is gross, this isn't that bad. It's just a little bit of fish upchuck with some undigested flowery-looking sea animals in it. No big deal, guys. Nothing to see here. Scientific gold. Beyond the gross-out appeal, this fossilized vomit is considered scientific gold. Milan noted that it provides a unique glimpse into daily life at the bottom of the Cretaceous Sea. It's like finding a piece of dino-era trash, a rare find that tells scientists about the food chain, who was eating who, and how the ecosystem worked before the asteroid hit. What began as a quiet press release in Denmark has become a worldwide sensation, with Milan even joking that this is now the world's most famous piece of puke. You're welcome. The Secret Sharks of Mammoth Cave. Forget Jaws, the real shark story is happening in a cave. In Kentucky, nestled amidst the rolling hills and deep river valleys, is the world's longest cave system. It's called Mammoth Cave, and it is home to thousands of years of history. It's also home to some very old species of shark. In Mammoth Cave, scientists keep finding new species of shark from prehistory, and it's starting to get ridiculous. In 2025, scientists identified yet another previously unknown shark species inside the world's most terrifying cave system. It's the 5th one so far, and there are probably more. Why is Mammoth Cave, the last place you want to get lost without a flashlight, full of so many ancient sharks? This is a big, dark maze, better known for stalactites and bat guano than ancient sea monsters. But here we are, in shark heaven. The shark with a secret. In 2021, the year we were all stress-baking banana bread, researchers at Mammoth Cave found a teeny tiny fossilized shark tooth embedded in the St. Genevieve Formation, a rock layer that's off-limits to tourists, but wide open to paleontological investigators. The tiny shark tooth was taken back to base, where it was stuffed in a drawer and forgotten about for a few years. Then, this year, 2025, scientists were like, did anyone identify that tooth? And sure enough, when they got around to the scientific tests, they confirmed the tooth to be that of a previously unknown shark. It's since been given the name Macadens olsoni. Oh, and by the way, it had been dead for about 340 million years. That was before dinosaurs even existed. For some reference, the first dinosaurs appeared on Earth about 240 million years ago, making sharks some of the most ancient animals on the planet. The shark in a cave. I think I should address the elephant in the room, or in this case, the mammoth in the cave. How the heck have so many prehistoric sharks been found inside one cave system? Do sharks even live in caves? You have to remember that a very long time ago, as in 335 to 340 million years before you were born, Mammoth Cave wasn't a cave. It was an ocean. Picture Kentucky, not with bourbon and bluegrass, but with prehistoric sharks cruising through the surf like they owned the place. I mean, they did. Kentucky was entirely underwater. When sharks died in ancient times, they floated down to the bottom of the sea and decayed, and sometimes their teeth got jammed up in sediment and mud and fossilized. And then, as Mammoth Cave formed over millions of years, through ice ages and tectonic shifts, those teeth got lodged in the walls and ceilings of the cave. It just takes someone with a keen eye to come along and free them from their stony prisons. Underground, shielded from the rain, wind, and nosy raccoons, the shark teeth of Mammoth Cave are ripe for the picking and perfectly preserved. The shark's spiral secret. A shark this old must be a total monster, right? Well, don't get too excited, because this beast was no Jaws, and it was definitely not a megalodon. This little guy measured under a foot long. I'm talking a fun-sized predator here. But here's the cool part. Macadens olsoni had a tooth whorl, a curly row of teeth shaped like a pasta spiral. It didn't have your typical crushing, biting jaws with straight rows of jagged fangs. Its curly teeth literally looked like a spiral. It had the kind of mouth that evolved specifically for crushing mollusks and worms and things, not for biting. Kind of like a garlic press. As for its name, Macadens olsoni is a mashup honoring both Mammoth Cave and Rickard Olson, a retired park scientist who spent his career nerding out on cave fossils. The man is now immortalized in shark taxonomy. You know you've made it when your name is attached to an extinct marine predator with a mouth like a corkscrew. What else is hiding in Mammoth Cave? Like I said before, this is only the newest addition to the Mammoth Cave shark family. Finding the fossil was a tag team effort from some serious science muscle. There was the National Park Service Paleontology Program, Mammoth Cave National Park, and the Smithsonian Paleobiology Department. They've been on a roll since 2019 with the Paleontological Resource Inventory, which is basically a high-stakes fossil treasure hunt in America's most underrated time capsule. Over the last 6 years, the remains of at least 70 ancient shark and fish species have been found in Mammoth Cave. Everything from coral fossils to mysterious sea creatures and even mammals. It's like the cave is holding a prehistoric rave, and nobody told the surface world. According to Molly Schroer, public info officer at Mammoth Cave, every shark discovery helps scientists fill in the evolutionary gaps that connect these bitey ancestors to the sleek killers you obsess over during Shark Week on Discovery Channel. Mammoth Cave is the gift that keeps on giving. 5 new shark species since 2019, including the newly knighted Macadens olsoni. Either way, keep your eyes peeled on your next trip to Mammoth Cave. The next piece of the evolutionary puzzle might be hiding somewhere dark, damp, and full of bats, and you might be the one to find it. The Pliosaur skull that shook the world. Step aside, T-Rex, there is a new apex predator in town, or rather a very old one, rising from the depths of the Jurassic like a resurrected sea god. In what can only be described as the paleontological equivalent of striking gold, scientists have uncovered a 95% complete Pliosaur skull, and it's already made its way into the Guinness World Records. This Pliosaur was even more frightening than some of the other sea beasts I've told you about today. This one's head alone was almost 7 feet long, and it came equipped with 130 teeth and was shaped like a torpedo of doom. The Jurassic Coast. You've heard of Jurassic Park, but what do you know about Jurassic Coast? The Jurassic Coast is a stretch of coastline in the south of England. It's also known as the Dorset and East Devon Coast, but really we should all be calling it Dino Beach for the shocking number of bones found here. The coast is 96 miles of fossils. Throughout various epochs, this stretch of coastline has been everything from a desert to a marsh to a shallow tropical sea. And so, it is riddled with remains from creatures spanning a lot of Earth's history. Fossil enthusiast Phil Jacobs found himself on the Jurassic Coast recently, scanning the cliffs near Kimmeridge Bay for something old and toothy. Sure enough, he spotted a glint of bones sticking out of the rock, the exact kind of thing he was looking for. When he approached, Phil realized immediately that he had spotted something important. This wasn't just some bone fragment to put in his pocket and take home. He'd found a whole skull, and it belonged to something gargantuan. What do you do in such a situation? You phoned paleontologist Steve Etches. Steve went down and helped Phil dig a pint-sized Meg out of the rock. They had to carve away about 40 feet of cliffside to get at it, but they did it. The duo carefully extracted a skull the size of a dining room table and carried it about a mile by hand, presumably while breathless, exchanging high fives and grinning ear to ear. Their prize was a 150 million-year-old marine monster head, so pristine, it looks almost fake. Just for fun, let's say you found a monster skull. What would you do with it? Donate it to a museum or put it next to your decorations at home? Maybe use it as a coffee table? Centerpiece? Let me know in the comments. A paleontological unicorn. Scientists are calling this discovery a paleontological unicorn for a few good reasons. First, the skull is 95% complete, which is outrageous. Secondly, it has 130 razor-sharp teeth still in its mouth. That in itself is a miracle. Its upper and lower jaws are still locked together, and its skull is 6.5 feet long. That's a whole lot of face. That's way longer than most people are tall. Finding a fossil this complete and this big is like digging up a Ferrari in a junkyard with the keys still in the ignition. And those interlocked jaws, that's fossil gold. Most skulls collapse or fall apart under pressure over millions of years, as one might expect. But this one stayed clamped shut like it was ready for one last bite. That is the most exciting part of the whole discovery. But hold on, what was this beast like while still alive? The tyrant of the Mesozoic. The Pliosaur was a lot like the Ichthyosaur. The Pliosaur wasn't quite as big, but it sure was terrifying. Try to picture a crocodile with a gym membership that uses the gym so much, it's on a first-name basis with the owners. This crocodile also trained with Navy SEALs, fought in 3 world wars, and outboxed a kangaroo. This crocodile, as hardcore as they come, then evolved into a 30-foot-long underwater killer with massive paddle-like flippers, a torpedo-shaped body, and a bite force comparable to a T-Rex. Getting the picture? Pliosaurs weren't just predators, they were apex aquatic nightmares. They devoured fish, squid, other reptiles, and anything dumb enough to get near the water's edge, including dinosaurs who didn't know how to mind their shoreline. How many fish do you know who actively eat dinosaurs? The newly revealed skull offers a crystal clear look at just how terrifying these creatures were. Crocodile-shark hybrid with the bite strength to shatter boats, cruising silently through the Mesozoic Sea. If it were alive today, humans may never have even ventured into the ocean. Just imagine it staring at you with its soulless, fishy eyes. People would have never built boats because they would have been instantly destroyed. The seas would have been ruled by actual monsters. Is that a world you'd like to live in? Science goes Jurassic. Armed with 3D scanners and medical-grade imaging tech, researchers are now virtually peeling back the layers of this prehistoric behemoth skull. They're studying its bone density, jaw muscle attachment points, and simulated bite mechanics. Scientists are reverse engineering this dino-era death machine like they're building a prototype for a live-action Jurassic Park. And they're hoping that when they finish with the skull, they'll be able to move on to the body. Don't forget, Phil and Steve only recovered the skull, but they suspect the rest of the body might still be buried under the surrounding sediment. Skeleton gets uncovered. It could end up being the most complete Pliosaur ever found. And it gets even better. The sediments surrounding the skull could hold clues to this Pliosaur ate, who it fought, how the marine food chain was structured, and maybe even how these creatures evolved over millions of years. Because this isn't just about one sea monster with an overachieving dental plan, it's about reconstructing an entire ancient oceanic ecosystem, full of creatures paleontologists have only guessed at through fragmented fossils. The whole dang Jurassic coast is a time capsule from the age of monsters, and every grain of rock could whisper secrets about Earth's most beastly chapter. And guys, make no mistake, if you had to pick a prehistoric creature to face off with, you would beg for a T-Rex after meeting a Pliosaur. T-Rex couldn't swim, it had stubby little arms. You could probably escape from one. But Pliosaurs are another story. You get in the water with one, and you're toast. Troodon, the Lex Luthor of dinosaurs. The Troodon was really smart. While its fellow theropods were out there smashing things with their club tails and waving their tiny arms around, Troodon was quietly observing, adapting, and judging them all with a level of intelligence unprecedented for dinosaurs. This wasn't your average prehistoric murder lizard with a brain like a hollow walnut. Troodon was a pocket-sized brainiac with a taste for both meat and salad. It was an omnivore with the smarts of a Harvard professor. It was so intelligent that scientists today believe it may have been the smartest dinosaur to ever sneak through the shadows of the Cretaceous. Scientists actually think that Troodon could have been more intelligent than Homo sapiens. Let's see if it's true. Small body, big brain, major attitude. Troodon's name means wounding tooth, which is kind of misleading. Sure, it had teeth that could slice up a squirrel, but the real standout feature wasn't in its mouth. It was what sat behind those massive owl-like eyes. This little dinosaur had a brain-to-body ratio that puts most of its dino peers to shame. Troodon's brain size relative to its body was so large, some paleontologists speculated it could have displayed advanced behaviors, such as strategic hunting, social interaction, or just contemplating the futility of existence while staring into a tar pit. Was it self-aware? Maybe. Did it build tools? Possibly. Did it use clever ambush tactics and gossip with its friends about which ankylosaur was the easiest to steal snacks from? I like to think so, but I can't confirm it for sure. The point is, Troodon had potential. What was on the menu? When Troodon wasn't busy outthinking its rivals, it was eating them. But unlike its strictly carnivorous cousins, who were all give me meat or give me death, Troodon had omnivorous tendencies. Its teeth were the prehistoric version of a Swiss Army knife, sharp enough to bite a critter, subtle enough to munch a fern. This meant that Troodon didn't have to risk its life chasing a fleet-footed dinosaur every time it got hungry. If hunting didn't work out, it could settle for bugs, berries, or whatever it could scavenge. You know, like when you're too lazy to cook, so you just slurp up some yogurt until you're either sick or full. You can imagine Troodon as the raccoon of the late Cretaceous. Fast, smart, and not above eating some goodies out of the garbage. Sneaky, swift, and sharp as a claw. Troodon wasn't built like a tank. It didn't have armor, it didn't have horns, and it didn't have an ego the size of a T-Rex. But what it did have was agility, keen senses, and strategic thinking. It was a survivalist, light on its feet, quick to act, and smart enough to know when to bail out of a bad situation. Its big, binocular-like eyes gave it excellent depth perception, which is exactly what you want when you're trying to pounce on a skittish lizard or avoid becoming lunch for something with teeth like steak knives. It was such a clever little creature that some paleontologists, like the brilliant Dale Russell, have proposed that if Troodon hadn't gone extinct with the rest of the dinosaurs, it might have eventually evolved into something terrifying. Scientists call this theoretical evolution a dinosauroid. It is, theoretically, a human-sized, upright-walking, tool-using dinosaur with a giant brain and weirdly humanoid posture. Scientists really think that in another timeline, the asteroid missed Earth, dinosaurs kept evolving, and the dominant species on Earth became hyper-intelligent reptilians, who naturally formed a society ruled by the evolved descendants of Troodon, possibly with space travel, possibly with even larger eyes. Maybe this society of classy Troodons would have been more peaceful and more advanced than us. Maybe they'd have colonies on Mars by now. How crazy would it be if when humans finally meet aliens, they're just super smart dinosaurs from another planet? Someone call Netflix because that might just be the greatest show idea I've ever come up with. Troodon wasn't the biggest, the strongest, or the flashiest dinosaur on the Cretaceous catwalk, but what it lacked in brawn, it made up for in brains. It adapted, experimented, and thrived in a world full of sharp teeth and low attention spans. So, what's the takeaway? Maybe it's that brains and adaptability can be a lot more powerful than muscle. Troodon wasn't the biggest dinosaur, but it might have had the biggest ideas. The Dragon of Mexico. Ever so often, paleontology unearths something so wonderfully weird, it forces scientists to take a step back and ask, what in the world is that thing? And that's exactly what just happened when scientists in Mexico found a brand new dinosaur. A dinosaur with arms so absurdly long, it could have played piano across the room. You know those long arm grabber thingies you can get to reach things without getting off the couch? This dinosaur had those for arms. Meet Mexidrakon longimanus, which translates directly and gloriously to the long-handed Mexican dragon. This dinosaur is 73 million years old and currently shaking up everything paleontologists thought they knew about dino diversity south of the border. The dragon emerges. The story begins in the fossil-rich lands of Coahuila, Mexico, where ancient sediments once settled in a lush estuary filled with oysters, marine mollusks, and apparently dinosaurs with arms longer than their dreams. In 2014, fossil hunter Claudio de Leon Davila uncovered the bones of this new creature. And by bones, I mean bits of limbs, vertebrae, and parts of the pelvis. From that modest stash of bone bits, a group of scientists led by Claudia Inés Serrano Brañas pieced together the identity of a never-before-seen dinosaur. And that dinosaur is our Mexican friend, a small, feathered, two-legged theropod with a neck like a noodle, legs made for sprinting, and hands longer than its upper arms. This thing was weird, and I mean really weird. This dinosaur had metacarpals, the bones in your palm that were so freakishly elongated, its palms alone were longer than its biceps. If that sounds impossible, remember, this is the same planet that gave us giraffes, narwhals, and everyone's favorite mashup of anatomy, the platypus. Not a bird, not an ostrich, and definitely not normal. Being such a creepy, unusual dinosaur, scientists struggled a bit to classify the creature. But they ultimately decided Mexidrakon belonged to the ornithomimids, a group of dinosaurs that looked a lot like the ostrich, or like the unholy offspring of a raptor and a very confused emu. Think long neck, long legs, and fast runner. But these were not just prehistoric birds on stilts. Ornithomimids were a strange and diverse bunch. While they had the basic bird-like build, they also sported long tails, strong beaks, and limbs that suggest they could do more than just run. Mexidrakon in particular seems to have taken the long-limbed lifestyle to its dramatic extreme. Its spindly, sloth-like arms may have helped it reach high into trees, plucking leaves, fruit, or flowers with the delicate precision of a salad connoisseur. Or scientists think it may have used those arms to snatch prey from the water like a prehistoric heron. Was it daintily nibbling berries? Was it surprise attacking fish? Experts don't know for sure, but whatever it was doing, those hands were way too long for comfort. And it may have had feathers on its arms, which means Mexidrakon may have looked like an overgrown turkey with a dragon complex. It was small, under 10 feet long, slender, and covered in proto-plumage. It probably dashed through estuary grasslands on its long legs, pausing now and then to wave its spaghetti arms at passing prey, predators, or potential dates. Like, hey ladies, ever wanted to date Mr. Fantastic in a chicken suit? A Mexican fossil renaissance. One of the coolest parts of this discovery is what it says about Mexico's dinosaur scene. For years, most of what scientists knew about late Cretaceous dinosaurs came from Canada and the US, two fossil hotspots with plenty of paleontologists to go around. But now, thanks to new digs in places like Coahuila, Mexico is catching up to the dinosaur party. Mexidrakon joins a growing list of recent Mexican discoveries, from duckbills to horned dinos, armored weirdos, and even tyrannosaurs. Many of these species aren't found anywhere else but in Mexico, hinting at a distinct regional ecosystem full of dino oddities. Mexidrakon longimanus might not have had the fame of T-Rex or the drama of Velociraptor, but in the world of long-limbed absurdity, it reigns supreme. Its discovery opens up new questions about how ornithomimids lived, what they ate, and how many more wonderfully bizarre species are waiting to be dug up in the Mexican Cretaceous. Because in the Cretaceous, the stranger you were, the more likely you were doing just fine. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Ghost Ruthless and James Merrill for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to hit that notification bell and the subscribe button and let me know what topic you would like to see next in the comments. T-Rex suffered from the King's disease. If you thought dinosaurs were all about teeth, terror, and tail whipping, allow me to introduce you to Sue. She is the most complete, most controversial, and most medically unfortunate Tyrannosaurus Rex ever discovered. Sue is a fossil with a saga going back 65 million years. And although calling her Sue makes her almost seem like a friendly grandmother, she was anything but. Sue was a 40-foot meat tank who lived into her 30s, got hit with a spell of gout, suffered from arthritis, had multiple bone infections, and then, 65 million years after her death, got seized by the FBI in what might be the most unnecessarily dramatic fossil raid in American history. A flat tire and a dog. On a foggy August day in 1990, fossil hunter Sue Hendrickson wandered away from her team while they were fixing a flat tire in western South Dakota. She had a golden retriever, a sense of adventure, and the world's best luck, because she looked up at a bluff and spotted 3 massive bones sticking out of the cliffside. And that's how the world met Sue the dinosaur, named after the human who found her. And what a meet-cute it was. 17 days later, the team had unearthed the most complete adult Tyrannosaurus Rex ever discovered. But this fairy tale would quickly devolve into lawsuits, federal agents, and a bidding war worthy of a dinosaur-themed Succession episode. Are you ready for the absolute absurdity of what the FBI did? 2 years after the discovery, the FBI showed up with the National Guard and raided the fossil site like Sue was hiding classified nuclear documents. Why? Because the bones were technically found on land held in trust by the federal government for a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. The team who dug her up had paid $5,000 for excavation rights, but without the proper permit, the feds swooped in and confiscated the whole T-Rex like it was illegal moonshine. You know your fossil is special when it ends up in federal custody. I don't mean to get political here, but can we agree it's crazy that the National Guard was brought in to, let's say, appropriate a dinosaur skeleton? If you agree that it's crazy, I don't even think there's a word to describe what happened next. McDonald's and Disney get involved. After years of legal wrangling, Sue was auctioned off at Sotheby's in 1997. And in just 9 minutes, she was snapped up for a record-breaking $8.36 million. The money came from the Field Museum, McDonald's, Disney, and a handful of private donors. Nothing says paleontology like a bidding alliance between big science and big nuggets. But thankfully, Sue was not put on display at McDonald's HQ. She now lives at the Field Museum in Chicago, where she stands gloriously tall, looking like she just walked out of a dino-heavy action movie and would like to speak to your manager. And although she looks tough as nails, Sue was surprisingly fragile. She suffered from some really bizarre conditions that I used to think were just for humans. The 9-ton queen with a bad back. You would think being a Tyrannosaurus Rex meant living the high life. Apex predator, big teeth, no rent. But Sue's bones tell a different story. She had gout, arthritis, she had a torn tendon, bone infections, and broken ribs. Though to be fair, the broken ribs showed evidence of healing, proving that Sue was one tough cookie. According to Field Museum paleontologist Jean-Mai O'Connor, Sue was in a lot of pain by the end of her life. Imagine being 40 feet long, weighing 9 tons, and every step makes your tail joints scream. Sue only made it to her 30s, but it was as if she had all the conditions of an 80-year-old hoarder. Apex predator, more like an aches and pains predator. That being said, Sue was a menace. Or at least she was when she was a teenager. Analysis of her thigh bone revealed that she gained 35 to 45 pounds every week during her teenage growth spurt. That's like tacking on a Labrador every 7 days. If you're picturing a moody, rapidly growing T-Rex teen with bad skin and a sarcastic attitude, you're probably not far off. Sue died riddled with weird medical problems, but she grew up as a meaty wrecking ball with teeth. The fossil gold rush. When Sue fetched $8 million at auction, the fossil world changed forever. Suddenly, fossils weren't just dusty bones for museum curators, they were investment-grade assets. Since then, prices have exploded. Prices have gone up so much that if Sue was sold again today, $8 million wouldn't even be the opening bid. She'd probably sell for upwards of $100 million. That's a guess, but not a baseless one. A stegosaur sold in 2024 for $40 million. And there's no way a stegosaur is as valuable as the world's most famous and most intact T-Rex. Believe it or not, half the known T-Rex fossils are now in private collections, out of reach for science, all because Sue proved that dinosaurs make for fancy decorations. Sue didn't just rock the fossil world, she turned it into Wall Street. And all these years later, Sue is still the champion. Sure, there's a Canadian T-Rex named Scotty who is a little heavier and a little taller than Sue, but he isn't as complete. She's the most intact, most studied, and most popular T-Rex on the block. And she had gout, the king's disease. She suffered from the same disease as King Henry VIII. And that, my friends, is pretty dang weird. But also kind of amazing, right? The duckbill with teeth from hell. This next dinosaur had way more teeth than a great white shark. Hadrosaurs are the most famous dinosaurs that you've probably never heard of. Hadrosaurs were the duck-faced, plant-chewing, dental nightmares of the dinosaur world. They were probably eaten a lot by bigger, hungrier dinosaurs with sharper teeth. But while hadrosaurs couldn't exactly square up with a T-Rex, they still may have had the most outrageously bizarre mouth in the entire dinosaur kingdom. Hadrosaurs boasted around an amazing 1,000 teeth. There are even some rumors they had upwards of 1,400 teeth. And they were unlike any other teeth on the planet, suspended by ligaments to allow for flexibility. They were designed to grind in perfect harmony, allowing Hadrosaurus to process whatever poor guy wandered into its maw. If Sue the T-Rex suffered from gout and legal drama, Hadrosaurs were over here doing dental gymnastics and quietly rewriting science while no one was paying attention. I think it's time to give the duck-billed king the weirdness crown it deserves. Let's start with the mouth, because that's the real star here. Hadrosaurs, like its cousins in the Hadrosaurid family, had a broad, flat duckbill. You know what a duckbill is, even if you don't know what it's called. Obviously, ducks have duckbills. Inside its bill, a hadrosaur had a jaw crammed with an amazing number of teeth, sometimes over 1,000 at once. But unlike ours, their teeth weren't lined in tidy little rows. Instead, they were stacked in columns. Parallel stacks of 6 or more per tooth position, all designed to grind, shear, and mash vegetation into a fine green smoothie. The teeth weren't even fused into the jaw. According to researchers from Canada, they were held in place by tiny ligaments, giving the teeth flexibility while chewing. It was kind of like a dino version of braces, only natural. Paleontologist Robert Rice compared the hadrosaur's teeth to chainmail, saying the teeth were flexible, durable, and woven together in such a way to take a major beating. Every time hadrosaurs chewed, dead teeth got ground away, while new ones marched forward from the back like toothy replacements on a battlefield. This walking beast with a duckbill for a mouth may have outchewed every other herbivore on the planet. Its mouth was a biomechanical food processor that never stopped running. And while its mouth may be its weirdest attribute, hadrosaurs are all around peculiar. Hadrosaurs were the first creatures to be dino stars at a museum. The first dinosaur glow-up. Hadrosaurs were the first dinosaur ever mounted and displayed in a museum back in 1868, which was decades before T-Rex came stomping onto the scene. It all started in New Jersey, when a lawyer turned amateur paleontologist named William Parker Folk went digging in a marl pit in Haddonfield. By some miracle, he pulled out nearly half a hadrosaur skeleton. The discovery was so monumental, it got the attention of the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences, which decided to build a full mount and put the skeleton on public display. It was a huge moment for humanity in general, as it was the first time the public could see a dinosaur skeleton, standing upright, towering on two legs. Suddenly, these creatures weren't myths. They were real, living, dragon-like monsters that people could dig out of the ground and put on display. Clearly, hadrosaurs lived in North America, but how would you feel knowing they also lived up near Santa's workshop? A strange homeland. Hadrosaurs weren't picky about geography. Fossils have turned up in New Jersey, Alaska, Japan, Mongolia. There could be one in your backyard for all anyone knows. Some species of hadrosaurs even lived in polar regions, which means they were trudging through snow, chewing frozen ferns, and acting like prehistoric caribou with dental superiority. And while they've often been pigeonholed as low-level grazers, scraping horsetails off the forest floor, some studies suggest they were browsers. Now, here's a comparison you never knew you needed. Grazers are animals that graze on whatever they find on the ground, like grass, whereas browsers are animals that can eat fruit off shrubs and trees, which duckbills were great at. They plucked delicious snacks from low branches and honestly lived pretty chill lives. And some of them had hollow crests on their heads. What for? There's the trick. No one knows. Some scientists think their colorful crests were for communication. Others think they were for mating displays, like, hey girl, like this weird red thing on my head? Let's make some dino babies. Also, the Hadrosaurus is the official state dinosaur of New Jersey. You're welcome. Hadrosaurs might not have claws or fangs or as many action figures as Triceratops, but in terms of sheer evolutionary weirdness, it's untouchable. A dinosaur with a duckbill, chainmail teeth, a groundbreaking museum debut, Arctic endurance, and maybe even a feathery coat. I think it's pretty fascinating. Dinosaur Bellybuttons. Once upon a time, 130 million years ago to be precise, there was a dinosaur waddling around ancient China with a secret under its scales. It wasn't razor-sharp teeth or claws of doom or a thirst for blood. This little guy had a belly button, prehistoric navel, a dino innie, and suddenly, the entire image of dinosaurs as snarling, scaly death lizards takes a hit. Because now scientists know at least one of them had a cute little belly button, just like your dog, or your nephew, or you. Psittacosaurus, the cutest dino. Forget T-Rex, the big oaf gets enough time in the sun. Let's leave the carnivores alone for a minute. The real star here is Psittacosaurus, which translates to parrot lizard. There's a hybrid animal I never knew that I don't ever want to see in real life. Nobody needs a grumpy cockatoo spliced with a bearded dragon. Or do they? This little plant muncher lived during the Cretaceous period. It was a close cousin of the Triceratops, but instead of horns, Psittacosaurus had a squat little head, chubby cheeks, long bristles poking out of its tail like a prehistoric feather duster, and the absolute audacity to have a visible belly button. Size-wise, it was around 6.5 feet long and mostly walked upright on its hind legs. I think it looked like a bipedal, parrot-faced reptile toddler with emo tail spikes. Weird enough for ya? The belly button. The star of the fossil world right now is specimen SMF R4970. Discovered in China in 2002 and later studied by a global squad of paleontologists, this fossil is absurdly well preserved. It still has fine details like skin scales, tail bristles, and the world's first fossilized dinosaur belly button. To see this, researchers use something called laser-stimulated fluorescence, which is a fancy new technology to make ancient lizard skin glow like it's attending a rave. Under the laser, a subtle scar popped out on the dino's belly. Not a wound, not a birthmark, but the dino version of a navel. The pattern of scales around the scar match those seen in modern reptiles like lizards and crocodiles. Even though modern reptiles hatch from eggs, they still leave behind what scientists call an umbilical scar. Finding out that dinosaurs also have this umbilical scar is a game changer. But did they really have umbilical cords like you and me? Sort of, but not in the mammal in the womb way you might be picturing. Mammals get belly buttons from the umbilical cord that connects baby to mama for 9 months of snack delivery and nap time. But egg layers like birds, reptiles, and dinosaurs have a way less dramatic version of this. Inside the egg, the baby dino's belly is connected to the yolk sac by a stalk. Once it hatches, that spot seals up and leaves a faint scar. And voila! Belly button. The mechanism is different, but the result is the same. A tiny belly scar from its time in the womb of an egg. Most of the time, that scar fades with age. But in this preserved fossil, it didn't. And now, scientists don't know what to do about it. But I will say one thing. Having a belly button really changes how you see dinosaurs. It makes them weirdly familiar, not just extinct monsters that had nothing in common with humans. Knowing we both had belly buttons makes dinosaurs feel a little closer to us, which is pretty neat. Were all dinosaurs secretly cute? Now scientists think that dinosaurs might be cuter than anyone ever imagines. This belly button doesn't mean that every dinosaur had a visible one, or that they all walked around with tiny tummy scars peeking out from their scales. Some reptiles lose that scar as they grow, and it's likely that many dinosaurs did too. But this discovery cracks open a new side of dinosaur biology, a softer, less Jurassic Parky side. It reminds us that even the scariest looking beasts had to hatch, grow, and figure out how to walk on their weird little legs without falling over. The dinosaur that ran away from Hogwarts. Some dinosaurs were terrifying. Some had belly buttons. And some sound like they should be enrolled in a school for wizardry and casually snacking on mandrakes between herbology class and Quidditch practice. There is a terrifying dinosaur with the craziest name. It's called Dracorex hogwartsia, a real-life fossil that looks like a medieval dragon and is literally named after Hogwarts. I hope you brought your wand and your wizard hat. The dinosaur that got its letter to Hogwarts. I want to start by dissecting this beast's name. Dracorex hogwartsia means Dragon King of Hogwarts. If that sounds like something dreamt up by a 10-year-old Potterhead on a sugar high, well, that's kind of what happened. In 2004, paleontologists unearthed a partial skull in the Badlands of South Dakota's Hell Creek Formation, a place that sounds suspiciously like a setting from Fantastic Beasts. This fossilized dragon head was then donated to the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, where staff, in a move of absolute marketing genius, asked visiting kids to help name it. Instead of ending up with something like Sir Chomps-a-Lot or Big Bumpy Steve, they got Dracorex hogwartsia, because Harry Potter was and still is a cultural phenomenon. Dragon King of Hogwarts is peak fantasy nerd perfection. If you're going to name a spiky-horned, battle-skulled dinosaur anything, this is it. But as with any magical creature, its story isn't quite what it seems. A problem with reality. This is the part where science crashes the party with a clipboard and a skeptical eyebrow. According to some experts, including one from the legendary paleontologist Jack Horner, the man who advised Spielberg on Jurassic Park, Dracorex might not be its own unique dinosaur at all. Horner and his team argued that Dracorex, along with another spiky-headed dino named Stygimoloch, the horned demon from the River of Hell, are actually just teenage versions of the Pachycephalosaurus. In other words, Dracorex might just be the dinosaur equivalent of a teenager in a leather jacket trying to look cool while growing out a mullet. Scientists think they had a new breed on their hands, but they might just not know the difference between a tween and an adult. Pachycephalosaurus has more horns than Dracorex, a bigger dome, and is really into headbutting things. A fully grown adult has a forehead like a bowling ball and about as much patience as the Hulk. Scientists suspect that Dracorex could be the same animal, just smaller. That could be why it has fewer horns, a smaller skull, and is full of unexplainable angst. It's just a grumpy teen Packy, not its own species. Though of course, take all of this with a grain of salt. No one knows the truth. Horner has his doubts, but he's dealing with a beast that hasn't breathed air since an asteroid hit our planet like a drunk driver crashing into a stop sign. Facts are fluid in these types of situations. Researchers have suggested that as these dinosaurs grew up, their skulls didn't just get bigger, they transformed, gaining ornaments and bulges and lumps that made them look like new species entirely. So when scientists say that Dracorex might just be a phase, they're not being dismissive, they're being biologically accurate. Dragon, demon, or punk rock lizard? Whether it was a phase or a standalone species, you can't deny that Dracorex looked metal as all heck. It had a flat, spiky skull decked out with bumps, knobs, and hornlets. Think dragon meets porcupine meets headbutting enthusiast. It almost had a head like one of those body mod guys you see who gave himself devil horns. It walked on 2 legs, ate plants like a good herbivore, and likely weighed in at around 500 pounds. And let's not forget its incredible size, stretching about 12 feet long. It was roughly the size of a large Harley-Davidson, if the Harley had a face like a medieval warhammer. If you're wondering what the point of having a skull like an anvil was, think WWE. Its thick skull was likely used in the ultimate prehistoric version of wrestling. Male dinos would have smashed their heads together to prove dominance, impress mates, and settle dinosaur disputes. And if that didn't work, their terrifying face alone might have been enough to make predators like raptors think twice before an attack. Would you want to try and eat someone who could beat you into a coma with their forehead? Don't think so. Does Hogwarts have a mascot now? Not officially, but if Hogwarts had a prehistoric mascot roaming the Forbidden Forest, Dracorex Hogwartsia would have been it. Regal, strange, probably moody, absolutely perfect. Even if science eventually folds Dracorex into the broader family of Packies, rebranding it as an awkward teenage stage instead of a full-fledged dinosaur celebrity, it'll always hold a special place in fossil fandom, because this is the only dinosaur ever named by children, for children, with a direct line to the magical universe of Harry Potter. And really, what's more magical than that? So here's to the Dragon King of Hogwarts, a creature that proves that paleontology can still surprise us, and that kids are way better at coming up with cool names for dinosaurs than most paleontologists. The world's largest organism. This thing has been alive longer than the pyramids. In the pine-scented wilds of Oregon, beneath tracks left in the mud and spilled trail mix, lies a creature so massive, so old, and so stealthy, it makes Godzilla look like a gecko. This isn't a dragon or an angry entity from the Two Towers. It's a fungus, and it is the biggest fungus. That's why it is now called the humongous fungus. Just how humongous do you think it is? Its scientific name is Armillaria ossoye, but we'll just call it H. fungus instead because it's easier. H. fungus is 2,385 acres wide, 8,650 years old, and tips the scales at an estimated 35,000 tons. To put that into perspective, it's roughly the weight of 233 blue whales, or if you prefer land animals, 58,000 fully grown bison. It is the biggest living thing known to science, now or ever, and its home is Oregon of all places. Let's plan a road trip to check out some fungus. I hope you're not picturing H. fungus as one giant mushroom squatting in the forest like a fungal Jabba the Hutt, because that's not the case. It isn't one mushroom, but its body does grow lots of small, tasty-looking mushrooms. You can even spot some of its mushrooms above ground. They are harmless little honey mushrooms, so don't worry, it's not trying to kill you. Mushrooms scattered across the Oregon wilderness are H. fungus's reproductive parts emerging from the real monster's tangled underground body. It needs those honey mushrooms to keep growing. The real beast beneath the surface is a vast and sprawling mycelial network. It's a collection of hair-thin filaments of fungal tissue that connects like the world's creepiest Wi-Fi network. This mycelium creeps through soil, tree roots, and decaying plant matter like it's been playing a 9,000-year-long game of underground Monopoly. It grabs one section, puts a few hotels on it, or mushrooms in this case, and keeps on conquering. Maybe Risk is a better analogy here. Whatever board game you want to compare it to, it's big. Antonis Rokas, a biology professor at Vanderbilt University, said this thing doesn't have a nice, neat boundary. It just keeps going. The eternal growth machine. Fungi like Mr. H. fungus don't stop growing. Not unless something makes them. They're considered indeterminate growers, just like plants. As long as the conditions are right with moist soil, dead wood, and no competition, the humongous fungus just keeps going. Maybe it watched Finding Nemo too many times. Instead of just keep swimming, this green monster just keeps growing. Oregon's lush, misty Mallard National Forest is one step away from being an all-you-can-eat buffet for fungus. Dead trees, delicious. Rotting vegetation, scrumptious. And thanks to lack of other fungi trying to elbow in on its territory, H. fungus is pretty much unstoppable. It isn't picky either, and will feast on whatever organic matter it can find. Dead tree, half-dead tree, tree that's thinking about dying. It's all dinner. But hold on to your microscope, because H. fungus isn't as benevolent as you might think. It's, well, how do I put it? Kind of a serial killer. The humongous fungus infects healthy trees and consumes them. It strangles them from the inside out, and then feasts on the corpse like a spore-covered hitman with a compost fetish. Maybe it doesn't seem like murder because it's a fungus killing a tree, but it's been getting away with it for 9,000 years, and it isn't slowing down. In the world of plants, H. fungus is Ted Bundy. As Andrew Wilson of the Denver Botanic Gardens put it, fungi like this are the world's most efficient decomposers of terrestrial plant matter. So while it's doing a public service by decomposing dead plants, it's also murdering healthy ones. This dual nature, being both a quiet recycler and a ruthless killer, makes the humongous fungus one of the most fascinating and terrifying organisms on the planet. The Walking Skyscraper. What do you get when you cross a giraffe with a skyscraper? A monster crashes through the canopy, its footfall so heavy that the ground shakes and entire trees fall down. Weird, prehistoric flying animals soar screaming towards the sun, and out of the dust emerges a skyscraper of meat, bone, and teeth. Meet Sauroposeidon, the dinosaur equivalent of a hydraulic crane crossed with a salad bar. At roughly 100 feet long and tipping the scales at 60 tons, this leafy behemoth was the kind of tall that makes Robert Wadlow look like a toddler. If you lived in a Manhattan tower on the 6th floor, Sauroposeidon still could have peered into your window to silently judge your breakfast choices. Right before it eats you. And no, that's not hyperbole. This creature may very well have been the tallest dinosaur to ever exist. But its exact height is dependent on a few things. Mainly neck bones and bickering paleontologists. Born from bones and bureaucracy. The story of Sauroposeidon begins in 1999 when some suspiciously enormous cervical vertebrae, that's neck bones for those of you who don't know, were dug up in Oklahoma. They were gargantuan, like tree trunks. From those bones alone, scientists estimated this animal could stretch 60 feet into the sky. That's giraffe on stilts territory. And for years, that was all scientists had to work with. They had 4 neck bones and a guess. Then, in 2012, paleontologists pulled off a classic taxonomic twist. A couple of bones also found in Texas had been bumming around for decades under the names Paluxysaurus and Pleurocoelus. But when scientists looked at them next to the giant cervical vertebrae from '99, they realized that the other bones probably both belonged under the Sauroposeidon name. These all might be the same dinosaur. Scientists just keep accidentally naming them as new dinosaurs. And to really mess with you, Troodon, Maryland state dinosaur, might also be the same thing too, which would make them all sauroposeidons and all bigger than life. Just check out the neck on these things. The neck that defied physics. With its extra long neck, Sauroposeidon may have outreached even Argentinosaurus, Seismosaurus, and all other sauropod royalty. But whether it stood tall like a giraffe or kept its neck horizontal like a vacuum cleaner remains a matter of debate. Ever get a sore neck from working on the computer too much? It's because you're holding your neck in an awkward position. Now imagine holding your head 60 feet in the air. Not only would you have one hell of a knot, but it's a cardiovascular nightmare. You would need a truck engine-sized heart just to pump blood up that long of a neck. That's the thing people forget about long-necked animals. Blood has to go from their heart to their brain, and some of these creatures had necks so long it would have been like trying to get water from a well to the roof of your house through a garden hose. Some paleontologists think it kept its head low to the ground, eating up ferns like a botanical Roomba or an oversized vegetarian anteater. Keeping its head low would have made it easier for blood to flow to the brain. Either way, its neck was long. Really, really long. Its neck is also a major reason why scientists know so little about the rest of its body. They've been so busy studying the neck, they've barely had any time to look at anything else. The legacy of the Poseidon lizard. Even with only a few bones to its name, Sauroposeidon has earned a reputation as one of the biggest high-reachers in Earth's history. Its sheer height, insane taxonomy, and dinosaur mix-up have turned it into a paleontological celebrity. Sure, it wasn't as heavy as Argentinosaurus and it wasn't as long as Patagotitan, but in terms of vertical intimidation, Sauroposeidon stood head and neck above the rest. It was about 100 feet from tail to brain. 40 feet of that was its neck. Half its body was its neck. What was nature thinking? And now meet Pando, that weighs more than 30 blue whales combined. But first, I want to give a shout out to Shadowman and Joanna Ardila for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and let me know your favorite giant creatures in the comments. The One Tree Forest. You think it's tough being you? Try having 47,000 bodies and one brain. That's the life of Pando, a colossal quaking aspen in Utah's Fish Lake National Forest. While it may look like a quiet woodland, this 106-acre marvel is not a forest at all. It's a single, sprawling organism. Pando is a botanical version of the Parent Trap, a family of identical clones all linked by one massive underground root system. It's been living this copy-paste lifestyle for a very long time, at least since the Ice Age. And while it doesn't weigh as much as the humongous fungus, this leafy leviathan still tips the scales at 6,500 tons, making it one of the heaviest living organisms on Earth. Sorry, blue whales. It's been cloning itself for a long time, at least since the Ice Age, give or take a few centuries. And while it doesn't weigh quite as much as our best buddy, H. fungus, it is still a respectable 6,500 tons. That's what makes this leafy leviathan one of the heaviest living organisms on Earth. What is Pando? Pando is a quaking aspen under the scientific name Populus tremuloides, which sort of sounds like a Pixar character, right? What makes it unique is that all 47,000 of its tree trunks or stems are connected by a single underground root system, and it is very comfortable the way it is. Most trees, as you probably know, grow from a seed, but Pando has no need for seeds. It doesn't date, it doesn't mingle, it asexually reproduces by sending up identical shoots from its roots. It pretty much just gives birth to itself, like if you grew your own conjoined twin on a whim. And it's been doing that for up to 80,000 years, making it older than human civilization. Geneticists first confirmed Pando's true identity in the 1970s, and it's been blowing minds ever since. It's like if you found out Central Park was just one really committed shrub. But there's a problem. That problem is that Pando isn't aging gracefully. In fact, it's starting to look like a retirement home where everyone's 85 and no one's had a visitor in decades. According to Paul Rogers from Utah State University, the situation is dire. Paul compared Pando to a retirement home full of senior citizens. He said it's slowing down, getting a little ragged, and not replacing its older trunks with new ones the way it should. Its famous root system is still there, but it's losing the will or the energy to send up fresh shoots. Its cloning process is starting to fall behind, meaning that Pando won't live on forever. But what in the world could possibly be responsible for killing this ancient, glorious megatree? It's deer. Deer are the culprits. Specifically, mule deer. They have completely overrun Pando and have started nibbling new saplings to death before they ever get a chance to grow. And now a bunch of farmers have let loose their cattle to graze in Pando's one-man forest. There is a feeding frenzy going on, and it is leaving Pando without new clones, and without enough energy to get in the saddle and make more. Back in the day, Pando had natural predators keeping the deer in check. Before modern society showed up, there were wolves, bears, and mountain lions. But with the introduction of people, the predators are all gone, and there's nothing but deer. And what happens when a whole species suddenly has no predators? They multiply. The deer are like a plague on Pando and could be its undoing after nearly 100,000 years. So we've got the deer, the cattle, and then there are the pests, the root rot, the fungal infections. Everything seems to be attacking Pando, and it's losing ground. Then again, some experts think the root system might just be tired. After tens of thousands of years, it might not have the stamina to keep up its clonal lifestyle. The tree that holds up a whole ecosystem. Despite its troubles, Pando is hugely important. Aspen groves like this are keystone ecosystems. They support a ridiculous variety of life, from insects to birds to other plants that rely on the shade and the tree trunks. Kill the aspen and the whole symphony of woodland life starts to collapse. The U.S. Forest Service and other conservation groups have been trying to help by doing things like fencing off parts of the grove, monitoring the deer, and studying genetics. But keeping a single 106-acre organism alive isn't exactly easy, especially when the patient can't move and reproduces like a photocopier stuck on repeat. Pando is ancient, massive, and quietly falling apart. It's a natural marvel, a living fossil, and a tree that should have its own Netflix documentary narrated by Morgan Freeman. Though I am open to options, who do you think should narrate the 80,000 years of Pando's incredible life? Blue whales. The biggest animal that has ever existed in the entire history of our planet is living with us today. Dinosaurs were big, mammoths were big, Titanoboa was big, but nothing, absolutely nothing beats the blue whale. It's the largest animal that has ever existed. It's bigger than any dinosaur, reptile, or fish that ever roamed the earth. And we have the honor to be alive at the same time. That's the best part. Somewhere in the deep blue sea as you're watching this, a behemoth is swimming along at over 100 feet long and weighing in at more than 150 tons. And it has a mouth that could comfortably swallow your car. Blue whales are so big, their heart is the size of a golf cart and beats so loudly you can hear it from a few blocks away, underwater. And yet until recently, no one really knew why blue whales are so absurdly huge. Scientists just sort of shrugged and thought, well, maybe it's a fluke of nature. It was only recently that a group of marine biologists teamed up with the express purpose of finding the secret to the blue whale's improbable, impossible, and downright intimidating size. The secret sauce? Turns out the answer comes down to two things: luck and krill. Two things that many of us are absolutely short on. Millions of years ago, some ancient whale ancestors decided to stop chomping on big prey and start filter feeding on krill and plankton instead. They went from eating large ocean animals to filtering tiny food through their special baleen plates, which work just like a giant sieve or a strainer. These whales became a group known as rorquals. It's the same group that blue whales belong to today. The rorqual whales were doing okay with filter feeding. It was an acceptable way to eat lunch. And then one whale stepped things up a notch. This whale was like, what if I could eat even more food? This gluttonous whale came up with a feeding strategy that sounds like a WWE finishing move. Scientists call it lunge feeding. Lunge feeding is what would happen if you mixed Olympic running with Olympic eating. It goes a little something like this. Swim full speed into a giant swarm of krill, open your massive mouth like the gaping portal to some ancient cave, and gulp down an entire cloud of tiny shrimp-like critters in one sloshy bite. The bigger the mouth, the bigger the gulp. The bigger the gulp, the bigger the payoff. And just like that, size became a survival strategy. A big body means a bigger mouth, which means more krill per lunge, which equals profit. In the blue whale's case, more bulk. The insanely greedy method of eating krill developed by blue whales is half of what has made them so huge. Timing is everything. Around 5 million years ago, global ocean upwelling intensified. What is upwelling? Glad you asked. Upwelling is the process where deep, cold, nutrient-packed water rises up, turning certain areas of the ocean into krill buffets. It was pure luck that boosted the blue whale to giant status. Its new feeding strategy rewarded size, while a massive boom in the supply of bite-sized prey gave the whales endless amounts of food. This was the biological equivalent of whales discovering both pizza delivery and high-speed internet on the same day. They haven't left the house since. It was the perfect storm for gigantism. And thus began the Age of Whales. Not everyone appreciates it, but us humans are living in a remarkable era of giant mammals. I know it would be cool to see a dinosaur, but can we appreciate being alive at the same time as blue whales? The blue whale's ultra-specialization trap. You know what a double-edged sword is, right? It's where something is beneficial but also detrimental. Like having a long ponytail might look good, but it might also get stuck in the subway doors when they close. The blue whale has its own double-edged sword. It never got the message about diversifying its portfolio. When the ancient rorquals started to diversify, some went after fish, others mixed their diets with various seafood, but the blue whale went all in on krill, like that one friend who went all in on crypto. They're either really poor now or really rich. Krill or bust. The blue whale is the most specialized of all the whales, and that specialization for a while paid off, but it came with conditions. Krill only bloom in specific zones, the ones that are cold and ripe with nutrients. Blooms are also highly unpredictable, so busts do happen, and when they do, it's brutal. Food simply ceases to exist, and blue whales will die. To survive the relentless cycle of feast and famine, blue whales had to evolve enormous energy reserves. They also needed efficient, hydrodynamic bodies, a whole lot of blubber, and massive mouths, all of which requires being enormous. And that's why the blue whale, quite literally, evolved into a logistical paradox. It needs to be big enough to eat enough to stay big enough to eat enough. Feeling dizzy yet? Imagine how the blue whale feels caught in an evolutionary feedback loop. It has become a specialist trapped in its own gigantism, like a bodybuilder who only eats one extremely rare brand of protein bar and must now bench press a bus to reach the next supply. And for the blue whale, supply is running out. The dying ocean. Here's where the triumph turns tragic. Blue whales evolved in a world teeming with krill. Today's world is a dumpster fire, and the krill are rapidly disappearing. Since the peak of the whaling industry in the 20th century, which, by the way, saw about 2.9 million whales slaughtered, krill supplies have been declining. Ocean warming, phytoplankton collapse, overfishing, pollution, shipping noise, and climate chaos are all chipping away at the fragile web that used to support whale-sized whales. And blue whales have no chance of changing. They are trapped in their krill-eating ways and will fade into extinction if the krill run out. It's really sad, but it's a subject that shouldn't be ignored, because if you ignore it, the next time you look up, there might be no blue whales left. But hey, it's not all bad news. Generalists, meaning whales that eat whatever floats by, are thriving. For example, humpback whales seem to be doing just fine in this krill wasteland. And it's because humpbacks can eat krill, fish, shrimp, anchovies, squid, leather boots, shipwreck victims, whatever's around. But blue whales are stuck. They can't evolve quickly enough. They can't downsize. They can't switch diets. They're too deep in the evolutionary rabbit hole. And I don't know if there's a solution. What lurks beneath Shark Bay? Redwoods are big, and that huge fungus in Oregon is definitely sizable. But if there were one plant to rule them all, it would have to be what's lurking beneath Shark Bay in Australia. If you are searching for the heavyweight champion of Earth's flora, the largest known living plant ever found, you'll have to strap on a snorkel and head into the shallow, salty waters. Because beneath the sun-dappled surface of this UNESCO World Heritage Site lies a single, sprawling seagrass plant so massive it stretches the length of 111 miles. That's about the distance from Manhattan to Philadelphia, if that route were paved entirely with waving green blades of grass. And yes, it is all one plant. Just like the tree with 47,000 trunks, the field of seagrass is made of clones. They are genetically identical and clonally connected. It's almost the same thing as Pando, the tree that's its own forest. Only this monster-sized plant duplicator is underwater. This botanical leviathan is Posidonia australis, known more humbly as ribbonweed. From above, it looks like a carpet of bright green undulating in the tide, but genetically, it's a monolith. Scientists gathered samples from 10 meadows across Shark Bay, each separated by wildly different salt levels and temperature. Then they analyzed 18,000 genetic markers, because when you're measuring a plant the size of Rhode Island, you don't skimp on the science. The result was mind-blowing. All the meadows spanning over 100 miles were from the same original seedling. One plant, thousands of clones. How did it get so big? You're probably wondering how something like this happens. The short answer is polyploidy. The longer, nerdier answer is that this particular seagrass somehow ended up with twice the number of chromosomes as its relatives, a condition called polyploidy. In plants, that's like giving them the genetic equivalent of a second passport and a black belt in adaptability. Polyploids are often sterile, but they grow indefinitely, slowly expanding by extending underground rhizomes, like vines with an underground subway system. It doesn't need to reproduce, it just creeps and clones and conquers. Left undisturbed, polyploid plants become botanical immortals. You might get one so big it takes over the whole ocean floor. But isn't that sort of what the ocean's been missing? A giant green shag carpet? This particular polyploid has been growing for at least 4,500 years, ever since the sea swallowed up Shark Bay's dunes after the last ice age. And it's been thriving ever since, despite salt levels that would shrivel most other species and water temperatures that can swing from 63 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't sound like the most relaxing environment, but for seagrass, it seems to work just fine. And that is good news for the environment, because seagrass sucks up carbon like your cousin sucks up 4-liter big gulps. Seagrass meadows are more than pretty underwater lawns. They are carbon-sucking, storm-buffering, wildlife sheltering, ecosystem superheroes. They help protect coastlines from erosion, filter out pollutants, and provide safe nursery grounds for marine life, from snails to dugongs to commercially valuable fish. And in terms of climate change, they're doing all the heavy lifting. Seagrasses store carbon at up to 35 times the rate of tropical rainforests. More seagrass, more carbon stored, less 10,000-degree heat every summer burning the forest down. But like everything else on this overheating planet, seagrass is under threat. The 2010 to 2011 marine heat wave that slammed Western Australia damaged vast swaths of Shark Bay seagrass. But by some miracle, our giant ribbonweed survived. They don't call it a weed for nothing. It bounced back nearly immediately without even reproducing. This is a sterile plant that shrugs off climate disasters like Muhammad Ali shrugged off punches. Which means, even if it does all burn down and the oceans turn to boiling acid, ribbonweed might still be doing its thing, cloning itself to become the greatest undersea carpet in history. Seriously though, Posidonia australis is more than just the world's largest plant. It's a living green mystery, a silent clone army that's older than most civilizations, bigger than any redwood grove, and somehow thrives while breaking every rule in the botany textbook. It's crazy that the largest living organisms in the world are grassy carpet, a hungry fungus, and one ambitious tree. And most people don't even know about this, so be sure to share your video with your friends and hit that subscribe button too. The Paleontologist and the Beast. When a fossil is too big to move, you either walk away or get creative. For years, something massive, fragile, and priceless lay left for dead, buried deep in the mosquito-choked, bear-haunted wilderness of rural British Columbia. It was a forgotten fossil too big, too remote, and too hard to dig up. And then one woman came to the rescue. She looked at the 75-foot-long skeleton sticking out of the cliff and said, "We're getting this thing out." Her name was Elizabeth Betsy Nichols, and if there were ever a real-life Indiana Jones for prehistoric sea monsters, she was it. The bones were discovered on the banks of the Sakani Chief River, a place with more bears than people, and a summer work window narrower than a nun's eyebrow. A team of scientists took one look at the thing and said, "No freaking way." They knew it was obviously a giant dinosaur skeleton, but there was just no way in heck they were getting it out of that isolated region. And to be fair, the situation was ridiculous. The fossil was buried in limestone so solid it was like concrete. The skull alone was 18 feet long, initially mistaken for a blue whale's skull. See where this is going yet? The creature in the cliff was big enough to give a blue whale a run for its money. The rest of the beast's body ran a staggering 69 feet from snout to tail. That's longer than a semi-truck. A fossil that size doesn't just get brushed off with a dainty little paintbrush. It gets excavated with jackhammers and helicopters. Most paleontologists took one look and said, "Let's document it and move on." But not Betsy. Betsy Nichols wasn't the type of media-hungry fossil hunter who swaggers around in a fedora, and she definitely didn't get into paleontology for the glory. As a child, she wrote to the legendary Roy Chapman Andrews, the real-life scientist who was the inspiration for Indiana Jones, to ask if girls were even allowed to be paleontologists. It was sad that she had to write the letter in the first place, but thankfully, Roy wrote back. He said, "Of course you can be a paleontologist." And for the rest of Betsy's life, she kept that letter and it burned a fire of ambition in her heart. Nichols recognized that the skeleton in British Columbia wasn't just a big ichthyosaur, those giant killer marine reptiles from the dinosaur age. She knew instinctively that this was a new species of ichthyosaur, possibly even an evolutionary curveball that didn't quite fit the mold. Initial study revealed she was right. It wasn't a typical deep-sea predator with fangs and bad manners like the other ichthyosaurs. This one was a filter feeder, like a whale. Only it was an ichthyosaur, so it had the body plan of a reptilian submarine. Basically, it was kind of confusing. Betsy named the new creature Shonosaurus sicaniensis, and it rewrote the ichthyosaur family tree. Creatures that were considered rampaging predators suddenly had a new member who ate its dinner more like a blue whale. Turns out it's because it was just as big as one, or at least pretty close. This is the largest known ichthyosaur ever discovered at a total of 69 feet long and 90 tons. It wasn't as big as a blue whale, but dang, it was close. It cruised the late Triassic oceans 227 million years ago, and its skull is terrifying. It looks like the skull of a 100-foot-long bird. From her base in Calgary, Betsy would drive 12 hours into the wilderness and then hike 2 miles on foot to the fossil site. The site was a rock face so remote it required helicopter airlifts just to move equipment in. Excavating the skeleton took 4 years, dozens of crew members, and more brute force than your average construction site. Rock had to be sawed, jacked, and hacked away. Each bone was so delicate it had to be carefully wrapped and airlifted out like VIP cargo. And Betsy pulled it off. Today, the fossil she fought to rescue is on display at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Alberta. It's a permanent monument not just to a prehistoric sea monster, but to the woman who refused to leave it behind. Nichols' legacy. Betsy Nichols passed away in October 2004, just months after the excavation was completed. She didn't live to see the full impact of her discovery, but her colleagues knew what it meant. That fossil changed everything about how scientists understand ichthyosaurs, the marine giants of the late Triassic. Betsy proved that you don't need to be flashy to be fierce. She quietly bulldozed through academic obstacles, fieldwork logistics, and gender barriers in a field that, let's be honest, wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for women. She saw the impossible and she did it anyway. The ultimate dinosaur smackdown. Which dinosaur really had the deadliest bite? New research might surprise you. Imagine you are standing in a Mesozoic jungle where everything smells like lush ferns and fear. From the dense foliage, a 9-ton predator emerges. Its teeth are the size of bananas, and its jaw is engineered to pulverize bone. This is the Tyrannosaurus rex, the undisputed champion and most people's favorite scary dinosaur. But soon other giants appear: the formidable Allosaurus, the aquatic Spinosaurus, and the Giganotosaurus. Who do you think would win in a fight? Go ahead and leave your guess in the comments. The thing is that not all mega predators were built the same. While they were all colossal, meat-loving monsters, new research using sophisticated 3D skull simulations reveals which one was truly the deadliest. Andrew Rao and Emily Rayfield from the University of Bristol decided to figure it out once and for all. They wanted to throw 18 of the biggest, baddest theropods into a virtual cage match. Using a combo of CT scans, laser photogrammetry, and a handy tool called finite element analysis, they built insanely detailed 3D skull models. Finite element analysis is a tool that engineers use to test the structural integrity of objects like bridges. All of these tools would help simulate forces and how much pressure things can withstand. In this case, bite force. And here's what they found. The mighty T-Rex wasn't just strong. Its skull was an absolute marvel of engineering. It was a rigid, deep structure designed to absorb immense pressure and deliver a jaw-dropping bite force of up to 12,800 pounds. That's like getting hit with a dump truck full of bowling balls. By contrast, other apex predators like Spinosaurs, Allosaurids, and Megalosaurids played a different game. They had lighter skulls, more flexibility, less brute force, and more finesse. The T-Rex was like a wrecking ball. It could smash its prey into pieces with brute force. But the other predators were a little more subtle and a lot more specialized. They slashed, they sliced, and used repeated strikes to hack off chunks of flesh. The T-Rex was a bone-crushing bulldozer. At the top of this meaty murder machine, the T-Rex had a skull that was deep, rigid, and had almost no movement between its bones. Its head was basically a hammer. At the bottom of its head was its jaw, with muscles like a crocodile on steroids. The T-Rex was also no scavenger. It would have only hunted live prey, typically by ambushing its victims, crushing them in its jaws, and it wasn't delicate about it. Fossils have shown T-Rex teeth embedded in the bones of prey that survived the initial attack, if you can believe it. Scientists think this means the T-Rex was a total lunatic. It may have attacked multiple victims at once, maiming some, killing others, and then fleeing the scene when it was full with half its victims still in shock, wondering what happened. T-Rex really was king of the dinosaurs, but it wasn't the only hunter out there. The Slicers. Allosaurus and friends. Now let's talk about the Slicers. T-Rex got by with its head like a battering ram and its teeth like the jaws of life. Others, like Allosaurus, Giganotosaurus, and Acrocanthosaurus, were built more like a sharp knife. They had big teeth just like the T-Rex, but their heads were lighter and their jaws were more flexible. Instead of pulverizing bones, they used the serrated blade-like edges of their teeth to slice into prey, not crush them. Consider the numbers. An Allosaurus bit down with 2,110 pounds of force, and even the enormous Giganotosaurus only managed 7,900 pounds. While these numbers are terrifying, they don't hold a candle to the T-Rex. What this means is that dinosaurs like Allosaurus worked harder for their kills. They had to chase more, bite more, and just overall cause more damage. But this also meant they didn't damage their own skulls by bashing at their prey like the unhinged T-Rex. Still, it worked. Each dinosaur's method was successful enough to dominate their ecosystems for millions of years. Just don't expect any of them to win a head-butting contest with a T-Rex. Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus was the wild card. Picture a sail-backed dinosaur with crocodile jaws, conical teeth, and the lifestyle of a fishing-obsessed recluse. Spinosaurs weren't designed to fight sauropods in open fields like the tyrannosaurs of the world. They were busy hanging around riverbanks, catching fish, and occasionally gnawing on unlucky herbivores that got too close to the rivers. Evidence from stomach contents includes fish scales and even bits of iguanodon. Spinosaurs really were like oversized crocodiles, lurking around watering holes, waiting for something to eat. But they didn't bite off more than they could chew. These creatures didn't have strong or large skulls. Their heads were long and narrow like a duck's bill, built for snatching fish rather than fighting predators. While its bite force of 4,400 pounds was impressive, it was still far less than the T-Rex, and its skull was long, narrow, and not designed for the stress of a head-to-head confrontation. You know that scene in Jurassic Park 3 where a Spinosaurus casually snaps a T-Rex's neck like it's made of twigs? That's just Hollywood. If those two had ever met in real life, and they didn't, by the way, since they lived on different continents and in different epochs, the T-Rex's skull would have been a far superior weapon. It may have had a stronger bite force than an Allosaurus, but Spinosaurus wasn't a fighter. It was the world's biggest and scariest river monster. So to recap, we have the Velociraptor, just to add to the mix, which would have come in with a bite force of about 50 to 100 pounds. But they didn't need a powerful bite to crush bones. Instead, it used its bite in combination with its lethal claws to subdue prey. Then we have the Triceratops, which, although it was an herbivore, it had a surprising bite force of 1,500 pounds. The Allosaurus came in 4th place with a bite force of 2,110 pounds. In 3rd place, we have the Spinosaurus with a respectable bite force of 4,400 pounds. In 2nd place, the Giganotosaurus with a powerful bite of 7,900 pounds, making it a formidable hunter, but it wasn't quite at the level of the T-Rex. Our champion, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, had the strongest bite of all, with a force of up to 12,800 pounds. Its skull was engineered for maximum strength and bone-crushing power. Does Dino Fight Club really matter? Of course it does. The researchers had a lot of fun making these 3D models, and they were finally able to put to rest who was the champion amongst the dinosaurs. But this research also actually does something even more important. It shows us how evolution created multiple apex predator blueprints. Some dinosaurs went full power, others optimized for agility, speed, or versatility. These adaptations let them share ecosystems without eating each other into extinction. They were specialized. One hunted big, one hunted small, one fished. It was a strangely harmonious world of blood, lizard armor, and dino teeth. So, could you have survived a T-Rex bite? Because isn't that what we're all wondering at the end of the day? The answer is absolutely not. Nobody, not even Goliath, could survive a T-Rex bite. You couldn't survive a juvenile T-Rex's bite. Why? Because T-Rex didn't just bite you, it disassembled you like a Lego house thrown off a balcony. You'd be crunched up in no time. In the end, each dinosaur did what it had to do to make it through a harsh, competitive world. And while T-Rex may win the title of most overpowered skull in history, its rivals were no less remarkable or formidable. They were the slashing, chomping, flesh-slicing variations on the same carnivorous theme. So if you had to fight one dinosaur, which one would you fight? Let me know in the comments. The first fat dinosaurs. A bone found in the back of a drawer could change everything. The first dinosaurs weren't necessarily fat or obese, but they were absolutely chunkier than anyone thought. Once upon a time in 1963, a team of British scientists was poking around prehistoric rocks in Zambia, mostly looking for the usual suspects. You know, dino fossils, maybe some early human ancestor or transitional species fossils. Typical day for paleontologists. But they found something unusual, a whole leg bone. You might be surprised to hear they didn't care very much about it. It wasn't what they were looking for or what they were studying, so like any underwhelming gift at a birthday party, they shoved it into storage at London's Natural History Museum and moved on. Fast forward 50 years, a researcher dusts off the bone, takes a closer look, and almost drops it, because this leg belonged to a member of the Scissorhands, a mysterious gang of prehistoric reptiles. These creatures were either dinosaurs or almost dinosaurs. Scientists can't agree. The Scissorhand family is one of the biggest controversies in the dinosaur world. The debate started heating up, and this leg quickly became the key piece of evidence. It was big enough to throw a wrench into decades of assumptions about how dinosaurs got their start. Scientists have been shouting for years that the earliest dinosaurs were small, scrappy underdogs who clawed their way up the food chain and grew into giants. But now, with this leg, that all changes. It turns out that Scissorhands, some of the earliest dinos on the planet, were already behemoths. Scissorhands lived around 240 to 200 million years ago, during the chaotic middle school of Earth's history known as the Triassic period. Their most famous member is, you guessed it, Silesaurus, a roughly 6-foot-long beaked creature that might have nibbled on bugs, plants, or whatever happened to annoy it. Remember, bugs were a lot bigger in the Triassic, so one ant was like a whole meal. Scientists initially thought that Silesaurids were dino-adjacent oddballs, close cousins but not true members of the club. Then, someone noticed their jaw tips looked suspiciously toothless, like early ornithischian dinosaurs. These dinosaurs include toothless dinos like Triceratops and Stegosaurus. Now the debate is a full-blown academic telenovela. Are they dinosaurs? Are they not? Are they long-lost ancestors or just evolutionary side quests? The fossil record isn't talking, mostly because it's made of rock fragments the size of cough drops. What I'm saying is that scientists need more bones to know the truth, which is what made the zombie and femur from the 1960s such a bombshell. Jack Lovegrove, a PhD student who led the new research, didn't expect to stumble across a giant, but the femur told a different story. Most Silesaur fossils are tiny, maybe a foot or two long. This is why scientists always thought they were built like prehistoric greyhounds, but this femur is over twice the size of the others. And in the tests, it didn't match the growth patterns of the known species from that area, Lutungutali situaensis. And that meant one of two things. Either Lutungutali grew like a weed on dinosaur steroids, or this was an entirely different, much bigger species. Either way, the implications are wild, because if early Silesaurids and other early dinosaurs started out big, then things need to change. What scientists have always pictured as small proto-dinosaurs skulking about might have been more like horse-sized herbivores strutting around like they own the place. But how does a species start out big? How did they get to that size? There are so many unanswered questions about the origin of dinosaurs. We are still putting together the history of life on Earth, and it is not an easy task, scattered across continents, mislabeled in drawers, and waiting to be found by someone like you, who's curious enough to ask, what the heck is that? And now I'll tell you the fluffy truth about dinosaurs, but just wanted to give a quick thank you to Will For and Keeper of Secrets for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to share this video with your friends so they are up to date with their dinosaur knowledge. The fluffy truth. Forget scaly lizards roaring across a volcanic wasteland. A jaw-dropping discovery in the frozen wilds of Siberia reveals that dinosaurs weren't just cold-blooded predators. They were surprisingly fuzzy. Thank goodness for Siberia. It's got all kinds of secrets preserved for us. And it wasn't just one or two dinos. It wasn't just the raptor squad or a few random bird-like dinos. Scientists think that all of them were fuzzy, from the duck-billed herbivores to the tyrannosaur tyrants. Every single dinosaur may have had feathers. Even the leathery-winged pterosaur may have actually been feathery, like a condor. Meet the two-legged, vaguely chicken-shaped trailblazer responsible for this revelation, Coelindrodromeus zabaicaligus. While its name is kind of a mouthful, its real claim to fame is its feathers. And not just one kind. It had 3 kinds on its shins, elbows, back, and everywhere else. Not just raptors and feather boas. Up until this point, every feathered dinosaur scientists identified was a theropod. Theropod dinosaurs were the popular kids of carnivorous predators, including famous fellows like Velociraptor and T-Rex. It might surprise you to learn that chickens are also theropods, which is exactly why, for decades, paleontologists had been piecing together the widely accepted story that modern birds evolved from flashy, clawed murder theropods of the past. But Mr. Cooley wasn't part of the theropod club. It was from a whole different dinosaur lineage known as the Ornithischians. These were a beaked, plant-munching crew more closely related to Triceratops than to any raptor. And they were apparently feathered. When paleontologist Pascal Godefroy and his team found this feathery anomaly in Siberia and realized it was from a completely different branch of the dinosaur family, they were shocked. It was hard evidence that feathers were likely a trait of their common ancestor, suggesting they were ancestral to all dinosaurs. It means even the tank-like Ankylosaurus and 80-ton sauropods like Argentinosaurus might have hatched covered in fuzz. The whole Mesozoic was one giant prehistoric pillow fight, one that you would not want to have gotten in the middle of. I can't even picture a Brontosaurus with feathers, but imagine the trail of fluff it would have left behind. Jurassic Park 8, The Fluffering. Coelindrodromeus lived about 160 million years ago near what is now the Colinda River in Siberia. It's a place where the summers are short, the winters are eternal, and even the local fossils need a jacket. The dinosaur itself was about 4.5 feet long and probably weighed less than your average golden retriever. It was built for speed, likely darting through Jurassic ferns on 2 legs with tufts of primitive feathers fluttering behind it like the world's weirdest track star. And these weren't your average bird feathers. Paleontologist Jacob Vinther said that these were 3 completely different feather types from what you find on modern birds. Some feathers were found to be ribbon-like and shimmery, with strands on the shins of the dinosaur that no one had ever seen before. These are brand new feathers rocking the scientific community. But wait a sec. Why did all of these humongous dinosaurs have feathers if they weren't flying? I don't imagine a Triceratops was flapping its horns to gain altitude. Ready for the truth? No one knows. Seriously, scientists admit they haven't got a clue. Maybe the feathers were for insulation, maybe for mating displays, maybe they were early attempts at skydiving that went horribly wrong. What scientists do know is that they weren't flying with them. These guys were strictly ground-bound. You might be wondering how you even get fossils this good, with the feathers still intact. I'll tell you how. Volcanoes. The site where the fossil was uncovered is now a quiet Siberian hillside. But back in the dino days, it was a picturesque lake surrounded by booming volcanoes. And this was apparently the worst possible picnic spot for juvenile dinosaurs. Most of the fossils found here belong to young Coelendrodromeus. Scientists believe a group of these young dinosaurs died in some localized volcanic event and then sank to the bottom of the lake and were coated almost instantly in a layer of fine volcanic ash. This preserved them in pristine, fluffy detail. But it's not something that happened often in the prehistoric world. This is a rare example. The Pompeii, if you will, of the Jurassic. Prehistoric speed chickens instead of terrified Roman citizenry. Pascal Godefroy and his team unearthed 6 skulls and hundreds of bones at the site. It was a legit fossil bonanza. And they're pretty confident there's more where that came from. Once they dig deeper into the hillside, who knows what else they'll find? Feathered Triceratops, scaly parrots, a Jurassic-themed bathhouse? At this point, all bets are off. The bigger picture. But what exactly does all of this mean? Why is it a big deal? It's a big deal because if both major dinosaur groups, theropods and ornithischians, had feathers, then their common ancestor probably had feathers too, meaning that every single dinosaur could have been born with at least a fuzz halo, if not a full-body poof. And it means they all started from an equally poofy ancestor, a sort of biological ground zero of feathers. If scientists can find the first ever animal to grow feathers, that will be a major breakthrough in scientific research. That said, there's a catch. Godefroy suspects that the truly colossal dinosaurs, the sauropods, the multi-ton behemoths with necks like fire hoses, were probably on the hairless side. I know I said all dinosaurs, and that's still the theory, but Godefroy suspects the big guys and gals may have been bald. When you weigh more than a garbage truck and radiate heat like an industrial oven, insulation isn't your top priority. These bigger dinosaurs may have been the exception to the rule of feathers. After all, elephants in Africa don't wear fur coats. They don't need to. Now, picture a dinosaur the size of a dozen elephants and you get the idea. Still, that doesn't mean they skipped the baby fluff stage. They might have been born looking like angry baby chicks before growing into bold, leathery gray tanks. Which means that Littlefoot from the Land Before Time might have been actually covered in feathers and was even more adorable. Now go try to watch Jurassic Park without being the person who points out that all the dinosaurs are historically inaccurate. I dare you. We might need a modern-day remake of the first movie. What do you think? Or should we leave it alone? A dinosaur embryo. The proof is in the egg. Birds are just tiny dinosaurs. Picture an egg. Not a scrambled egg, but a fossilized egg. Inside of that egg is a baby dinosaur curled up in a perfect hatching position. Its head tucked between its arms, spine curved like a comma, just waiting to break out into the world. Only this little dinosaur never did. It never broke out of its shell. And now, millions of years later, this prehistoric tragedy has turned into a scientific marvel. Because inside this delicate, rock-hard womb is one of the best preserved dinosaur embryos ever found. When scientists took a closer look inside the egg, they found secrets that had been locked away for 66 million years. The embryo's name is not great. I don't even think you can consider it a name. We live in a world ruled by museum inventory numbers. This little unborn baby dino is named YLSNHMO1266. Disappointing, I know. It should probably be called Burrito or something else. But it's not all bad news. Behind that string of letters and digits is a very fancy Oviraptorosaur, a feathered, beaked, almost parrot-faced dinosaur from the late Cretaceous. If a chicken and a velociraptor had a polite herbivorous cousin with good nesting habits, this would be it. Discovered 2 decades ago in Ganzhou, China, this fossil sat in storage for years until someone at the Yingliang Stone Nature History Museum took a second look and said, "Wait a minute, this isn't just a rock." Since then, Wai-Sum Ma of the University of Birmingham led a team to study the little dinosaur inside and out. For everyone involved, it was a dream come true. Most dino embryos are just a jumble of confused little bone bits. This one is the prenatal Mona Lisa of the fossil world. So what did they find when they took that closer look? Oviraptorosaurs were the misunderstood weirdos of the dinosaur kingdom. The name Oviraptor literally means egg thief. Scientists used to think these dinosaurs were sneaky little robbers who went into another dinosaur's nest and ate their eggs. Why? Because one Oviraptor was discovered fossilized near a nest. It got slandered for eternity. Everyone assumed it was stealing eggs, but it wasn't. It took a few years, but paleontologists did ultimately deduce that it was brooding the eggs like a responsible stay-at-home dino dad. Oviraptors weren't the thieves they've been made out to be. Since that little blunder, paleontologists have uncovered lots of Oviraptorosaurs sitting dutifully atop their nests, proving they were closer to helicopter parents than thieves. And now, with YLSN blah blah, scientists know they were doing advanced, avian-style pre-birth yoga inside the egg. This embryo had its head tucked under its wing, spine curled up tight, exactly the way that modern birds prepare to hatch. It's not a coincidence. It's a built-in behavior, one that helps the baby stabilize itself while cracking its way out of the shell. Although keep in mind the embryo didn't survive. Only its pose did. The shape of its body cradled peacefully inside the egg. This is what lived on, and this is what scientists have been studying. It's just a bit of a shock that these ancient dinosaurs had identical hatching styles as our modern birds. But I guess when a chicken is the closest relative of the T-Rex, it's not that surprising at all. And speaking of chickens, new research has proven that birds are dinosaurs. They aren't just related to dinosaurs, and they aren't simply descended from them. They are part of the family tree that runs through creatures like Oviraptorosaurs. Ancient dinosaurs wouldn't even have behaved that differently. This embryo proves that the behaviors you see in backyard chickens like tucking, pecking, and brooding were already happening in the age of Tyrannosaurus. Jurassic Park shows us big, scary T-Rexes stomping around and roaring, but in reality, they could have been doing the old chicken strut, pecking at the smaller dinosaurs that ran by. I mean, have you seen an ostrich in a bad mood, or a cassowary? You can't tell me that doesn't seem like a dinosaur. Other dinosaurs did it differently. Sauropods like Brachiosaurus probably hatched like giant scaly lizards, not like birds. One recent find showed a sauropod embryo with a nose horn that it used to punch its way out of the shell like a tiny armored tank, which is sort of like what emus do today by kicking their way free of their eggs. Wai-Sum Ma and his team compared the Oviraptorosaur embryo's development to that of modern chickens. By chicken standards, the dino was at day 17 of 21 in its egg lifespan. It was just 3 days from hatching before fate buried it forever. Incredible, right? Paleontologists can learn all this information from an imprint locked inside of an egg. Dinosaurs versus giant scorpion. Dinosaurs weren't the only ones you had to worry about. In the shadow of giants, a silent predator waited. Lurking in the underbrush of early Cretaceous China, back when dinosaurs ruled the land and mammals were barely more than twitchy meat snacks, there lived a scorpion. Now, I know this is a video about dinosaurs, but trust me, this is something you're going to want to hear, because this was not your average desert-dwelling, toe-pinching scuttler. This was a venomous arthropod tank with pincers, a stinger, and almost definitely an attitude problem. The question on everyone's mind is, did this scorpion take down fully grown dinosaurs? If a scorpion the size of your pinky toe can send you to the hospital with a heart attack, could a scorpion the size of your fist send a triceratops to its grave? The name of this potential dinosaur killer is Jeholia longchengi, and this is the first time in history that its fossilized remains have clawed their way into the paleontological record. These types of scorpions have been seen before, but typically they're found preserved in a chunk of amber like the mosquito from Jurassic Park. But this one is fully mineralized in stone like a frozen Han Solo. It was found in Chaoyang, part of the legendary Yehol biota. It's an ecosystem so fossil-packed, it's like nature's version of a USB backup from 125 million years ago. Birds, frogs, lizards, feathered dinosaurs, ancient mammals, and now one very angry scorpion. All these creatures and more have been found in the Yehol biota. It's a fossil buffet over there. Jeholia longchengi was a killing machine. This beast was a bruiser by scorpion standards. At 4 inches long, it would have towered over most other Mesozoic-era scorpions, which typically topped out at a daintier 1 to 2 inches. It was basically the Hummer of Cretaceous creepy crawlies, and it packed a punch, too. According to Diying Huang of the Nanjing Institute of Geology and Paleontology, this scorpion sported a pentagonal body, rounded spiracles, its little breathing holes, and unusually long legs. Its legs were perfect for speed, agility, and making any small creature in its path deeply regret being alive. Because once the scorpion raced to its prey on its marathon runner legs, its pincers got to work. Pincers are technically called pedipalps, and this scorpion's pedipalps were slim and sleek with no spurs along its mid-leg region. The lack of spurs and its overall streamlined build suggests the scorpion may have been more of a stealth ambusher than a brute force grappler. What we've got here is a silent stalker of bugs, frogs, small mammals, and possibly your nightmares. Unfortunately, though, its mouth parts didn't fossilize, so there's a big gap in scientists' knowledge of the creature. But the experts say its size and context strongly imply that this creature was no passive insect muncher. J. longchengi likely went after whatever it could overpower. But what happened if a dinosaur walked by and kicked one? Would the scorpion have stung the dinosaur back as a sort of automatic response? And if it did sting a giant dinosaur, how strong was its venom? Scientists don't actually have an answer for this. They do know that the scorpion was venomous based on the fossil, but they can't say how venomous. I think to extrapolate based on modern scorpions, you could safely say that it was at least somewhat deadly to somewhat smaller dinosaurs. Maybe it wouldn't take out a 100-foot-long sauropod, but a 2-foot-tall raptor? Heck yeah, I don't see why not. What do you think? Any scorpion experts out there who can add some context? Let us know in the comments. Another thing that makes this discovery really special is that terrestrial scorpion fossils are ridiculously rare. Most scorpions from the Mesozoic era, spanning a casual 186 million years, ended up preserved in amber, if at all. And even then, most were tiny, delicate, and not exactly poster children for apex predation. The reason for this is that scorpions live under rocks and logs and anywhere least likely to fossilize. They are secretive survivalists, not exhibitionists, and fossilization prefers drama. Most fossilized creatures are usually fossilized because they ended up in lava, floods, or tar pits. Venomous scorpions living under damp branches and in moss clumps had quiet, uneventful deaths and were almost never fossilized. In fact, these are so rare that J. longchengi is only the 4th terrestrial scorpion fossil ever found in China. I love it because it paints a clearer picture of the ancient world. Bugs and dinosaurs. Experts studying this multi-legged monster even speculated that if you dropped the scorpion into today's environment, it would still do just fine. It might even become the apex predator in your backyard, casually snacking on anything under 6 inches tall and making pest control companies obsolete. Maybe when Colossal Biosciences is done resurrecting the woolly mammoth and the Tasmanian tiger, they can bring back the most terrifying 4-inch-long bug eater that ever lived and unleash it on the mosquito population. That would be good, right? Jeholia longchengi is so much more than just a fossil. It's a missing chapter in scorpion history and a glimpse into how ancient arachnids adapted to their environments, filled ecological roles, and became key players in prehistoric food chains. The fossil now resides at the Fossil Valley Museum in Chaoyang, waiting for more specimens to help confirm its role in this long-gone world. Until then, it's a reminder that sometimes the scariest creatures don't need feathers or a feature-length movie deal. Sometimes all it takes is a stinger, a good set of legs, and a talent for hiding in plain sight for 125 million years. Secrets of dinosaur eggs. China just revealed a huge discovery they've been keeping a secret. They just cracked 3,000 dinosaur eggs. If paleontology had a Jurassic version of the Rosetta Stone, it just hatched in China's Hubei province, complete with 3,000 backup copies. For decades, fossilized dinosaur eggs have been relegated to the role of prehistoric curiosities, tucked behind museum glass like nature's paperweights. But now, a stash of 3,000 almost perfect eggs from the late Cretaceous has been unearthed, dated, and cracked open for clues. Nobody made any scrambled eggs, so I can't tell you what multi-million-year-old eggs taste like, but the scientists did reveal a dramatic new chapter in the history of extinction, one where climate change may have played a leading role in the destruction of the dinosaurs. Turns out the dinosaurs weren't just unlucky by getting hit with that annoying asteroid. These new eggs tell a different story where the dinosaurs were already facing extinction due to climate change. The eggs were found in Qinglongshan, a mountain range in Hubei province. Scientists think that in prehistoric times, the area was a dinosaur nursery. It would have been used by dozens of dinosaur mothers to raise their broods in safety. Even a T-Rex wouldn't mess with half a dozen hormonal sauropod mamas. Out of the over 3,000 fossilized eggs recovered, some found still in their nests, there was one batch that stood out. The real showstopper was a fully intact nest of 28 eggs from Placholithus tumileongensis, a proud member of the Dendrolithidae family. Whew, that was hard to say. And since I think most of us don't have a PhD in dinosaur bones, I'll try to explain who these guys were once upon a time. Dendrolithidae is a family of Cretaceous suburban birds that took nesting as seriously as an Olympic sport. The shells of their eggs were riddled with pores, making the eggs themselves look like calcified sponges, and that instantly raised red flags for the research team. Why? Because porous shells can tell you a lot more than egg size or parenting style. They can tell you all about the climate at the time the eggs were laid. Scientists realized they were about to get a weather report from the Cretaceous. They just needed to get a few samples back to the lab. Dating dinosaur eggs used to be like guessing the age of a book based on the dust around it. Scientists couldn't date the actual eggs, so they had to focus on dating the dirt the eggs were found in. But that all changed with this new study. Instead of relying on the age of nearby sediment or volcanic ash, scientists pointed lasers directly at the eggshells. You've heard of carbon dating, but times have changed. They use uranium-lead dating, an incredible new method so precise, it's kind of scary. By blasting the eggs with a microlaser and analyzing the resulting carbonate aerosol via mass spectrometry, researchers measured uranium's slow decay into lead. Beneath all of that scientific jargon is the age of the eggs, 85 million years, give or take a geological blink. That places them in the late Cretaceous, just as the world was beginning to cool from its greenhouse heyday. It was a time when the dinosaurs started to feel the chill. As everyone's favorite moody Night's Watchman would say, winter is coming. The highly porous structure of the eggshells was a clue as to just how brutal the climate was at the time these eggs were fresh. More pores on the shells means there was more gas exchange happening, which indicates a tropical paradise suddenly experiencing a major drought. Dr. Bi Zhao and her team, publishing in the scientific journal Frontiers in Earth Science, argue that these adaptations might reveal a broader climatic narrative in which dinosaurs across continents were making desperate tweaks to their genetics to survive a changing world. A few open pores on an eggshell, and suddenly scientists think they've discovered a dinosaur-era climate collapse. Could the dinosaurs really have been on their way out the door before the asteroid? Could Earth have been turning into a snowball and the asteroid actually saved it from a deep freeze so severe that humans might not even exist today? Maybe, but that's a little much to determine based on some eggshells. Now, scientists are hoping to replicate this technique globally, which could allow them to reconstruct not just nesting habits, but seasonal migration patterns and extinction timelines with shocking accuracy. Suddenly, dinosaur eggs have become more than curiosities and prehistoric relics. They are timestamps from a species' final chapters, recording in calcium what bones and footprints could never quite capture. In the future, dinosaur eggs could reveal the exact date a species blinked out of existence. And that's quite an advancement in technology. One day, you'll be able to point a laser at a fossil and practically summon its ghost, or at least maybe a hologram. A dragon in the Badlands. It started with a rock the size of a toonie and ended with a 75-million-year-old winged predator. By the way, a toonie is what the folks up in Canada call a $2 coin. Andre Mueller was an undergraduate from McGill University with a childhood obsession for dinosaurs. So when he found a creature that could have been a snack for a raptor while also being a nightmare for a Cretaceous mosquito, it's safe to say he was excited. What Andre found was what no paleontologist in Canada had pulled off before. He found a dragonfly fossil from the time of the dinosaurs in a region famous for T-Rex teeth and duck-billed giants. It's kind of amazing. And if you know anything about dragonflies, you'll know they are the most successful predators in the animal kingdom, with a hunting success rate of 97%. Just to compare, lions are at about 20 to 30%. Now, Mueller is a grad student, but in 2023, when he made the find, he was a sharp-eyed undergrad with field dust in his socks. He was attending a paleontology course at Alberta's Dinosaur Provincial Park when destiny and a suspicious rock landed in his palm. The site is a Cretaceous fossil Disneyland sprawled over a massive chunk of Alberta's Badlands, Canada's version of a desert. The site has already produced over 40 species of dinosaurs, making it one of the richest dinosaur fossil deposits on the planet. But never before had anyone found a flying insect fossil. Well, apart from one lonely aphid discovered trapped in amber who probably wished it had been born a mosquito. Other than that one aphid, the park's insect record was practically nil. So when Mueller looked down at that humble chunk of stone and saw something with veins, he knew he had something special. And unlike most of us who'd probably post a blurry photo to Facebook and call it a day, he called in the experts. The fossil turned out to be a dragonfly wing, and not just from any dragonfly, but from a brand new species named Cordueladensa acorni. The insect owes its mouthful of a genus name to John Acorn, a champion of public natural history in Alberta. Think David Attenborough with more mosquitoes and fewer camera crews. The little beast was about the width of a human hand, which in insect terms puts it firmly in terrifying if it lands on your face territory. I don't care if it's a dragonfly, a spider, an ant, a beetle. If it's the size of my hand, I don't want it near me. I mean, they're cool and everything, but I like them from far away. While Mueller affectionately called it just a little fella, he noted that it was likely a tasty raptor snack. This dragonfly was so big that velociraptors may have hunted them. And while I'll admit dragonflies aren't nearly as creepy as arachnids, they're still bugs. Amazingly, the implications of this prehistoric bug go well beyond cool wings and catchy Latin names. According to Professor Hans Larsen, who led the excavation, this fossil helps plug a gaping 30-million-year hole in the dragonfly fossil record. Bet you didn't know that was a thing. Hans said the dragonfly's wing structure suggests it was adapted for gliding, which is an energy-efficient flight strategy shared by some migratory species today. So not only was this prehistoric insect cruising the skies while duck-billed dinosaurs munched on ferns below, it might have been doing seasonal road trips across ancient Alberta, dodging thunderstorms and pterosaurs like a six-legged ultralight aircraft. Renowned paleontologist Philip Currie, the guy who helped found the Royal Tyrrell Museum and basically wrote the book on Alberta's dinosaurs, said we have spent so long focusing on the big guys that we forgot to look down. And he's kind of right. Paleontologists in Alberta have spent so long studying the giant dinosaurs that they've neglected the bugs, fish, ferns, and hand-sized dragonflies. But now, thanks to Mueller's find, the floodgates are wide open. Researchers are already digging for more insects in those same fossil beds. And once paleontologists start specifically looking for insect stuff instead of tripping over them by accident, it's only a matter of time before they find them. And whatever they find, you can bet I'll tell you all about it right here on Origins Explained, so don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. The Goblin Prince. In the age of towering tyrannosaurs and duck-billed giants, one creature got overlooked. Say hello to Bolg Amundol. Not a dragon, but a newly identified species of prehistoric lizard that looked like it crawled out of The Hobbit and into a dino documentary. No, seriously. Even its name comes from the Elvish language in Lord of the Rings. Bolg Amundol is Elvish for mound-headed Goblin Prince. When you discover a 3-foot-long scaly bruiser with a face only Smaug could love, what else do you call it? The fossilized remains of Bolg didn't exactly burst from the earth in a blaze of cinematic glory. In fact, they've been quietly collecting dust in a museum drawer since 2006, like a cursed heirloom waiting for the right wizard to stumble upon it. That wizard turned out to be Hank Woolley of the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County, who took one look at the jagged skull fragments and thought, goblin, definitely goblin. With just enough bone to reconstruct its broader lineage, Woolley and his team confirmed the creature belonged to the early branch of Monstersauria, a group of venomous lizards that still haunt the deserts of North America today. You may have even seen one. Ever heard of a Gila monster? They are adorable to some and terrifying monsters from hell to others. They are also part of the Monstersauria family and very much still alive right now. Only the Goblin Prince was bigger, badder, and way more inclined to appear in your nightmares. Today's Gila monsters top out at around 20 inches, which is roughly the length of a medium baguette, or one of those foam swords you find at birthday parties, but no one knows where they actually came from. Bolg was big, way bigger. The goblin could have measured over 3 feet from tip to tail, putting him in the size class of a savanna monitor lizard or a Komodo dragon. Definitely not the kind of goblin you want hiding under your bed. What makes Bolg even more intriguing is his passport. Its fossil fragments came from Utah, but Bolg's closest evolutionary cousin lived in the Gobi Desert of Asia. That's a clue. Back in the late Cretaceous, around 76 million years ago, the continents were still flirting with each other like awkward prom dates. In other words, the continents were very close to each other, some even hip to hip. Land bridges connected vast territories to one another and facilitated migrations of dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures. And that is how Bolg spread its DNA far and wide. While tyrannosaurs were stomping across what is now North America and Asia, Bolg and his scaly relatives were also making transcontinental treks, stopping only to sunbathe, bite things, and glare menacingly at larger animals from under rocks. The discovery of the Goblin Prince does more than add a fantasy character to the fossil record. It helps scientists understand more about the evolutionary saga of the Monstersauria family. Until now, the lineage of venomous lizards had a fossil trail full of plot holes. Bolg helps bridge the gap, proving that while dinosaurs hogged the spotlight and the toy aisle, a whole cast of non-dino reptiles shared the Cretaceous stage. It's a reminder that life back then wasn't just about scale and teeth. Sometimes it was about the weird, the sneaky, and the goblin-esque. Do you think we should start paying attention to the other weird animals of prehistory and put dinosaurs on the back burner? Or are dinosaurs still the coolest? Let me know in the comments. The giant 85 million-year-old mystery. It had the neck of a Loch Ness monster, the jaw of a nutcracker, and the patience of a fossil. Probably because I'm actually talking about a fossil. This particular bone waited 85 million years for someone to finally call it by name. In 1988, somewhere near the Haslam Formation on Vancouver Island, fossil hunter Mike Trask and his daughter Heather stumbled upon the broken remains of a creature that looked like it had been designed by a horror novelist. It was about 39 feet long, with a swan-like neck and a grin full of teeth that said, "I don't chew my food, I pulverize it." The beast was initially assumed to be just another member of the Plesiosaur family tree. Plesiosaurs, just as a refresh, were like mutant killer dolphins. They looked sort of like dolphins, but with more of a killer attitude. They were among the most populous and diverse sea monsters of the ancient world. But there was a problem with Mike's fossil, or maybe a few problems. The biggest issue was that it didn't quite look like any known plesiosaur. For decades, the skeleton sat in paleontological limbo because no one could figure out which family tree it should go on. It had what researchers politely call ambiguous characteristics, which is academic code for this thing is weird and we have no idea what to do with it. Fast forward to 2024. After years of quiet curiosity, paleontologist F. Robin O'Keefe of Marshall University finally cracked the case wide open. Robin discovered new fossils of the same sea monster, including a juvenile skeleton so well preserved it might as well have come with a user manual. These fresh finds confirmed what everyone had been whispering since the Reagan era, that this was no ordinary sea lizard. It has a very odd mix of primitive and derived traits, said O'Keefe, noting that the shoulder structure alone was unlike anything he'd ever seen in plesiosaurs. And when a guy who studies marine reptiles for a living says your shoulder is strange, you can take that to the bank. So the team drew a line in the fossilized sand and named it. After 30 years, the dinosaur discovered by Mike Trask was named Traskosauria sandrii, after the Trask family. And now, are you ready for some tragedy? Mike Trask died in May 2025, just 1 week before the dinosaur he found 37 years earlier was given an official name. 1 week! He held on for almost 40 years, hoping his dinosaur would finally get a name. But then he died mere days before it was named after him. But hey, at least the Trasks are now immortalized. Their family name will live on, attached to a sea monster so scary that if you ever encountered it, you'd wish you were fighting 5 gorillas instead. For starters, its neck was seriously dramatic. With at least 50 vertebrae, T. sandrai may have been the yoga champion of the Cretaceous. Scientists believe this anatomical feature made it particularly good at diving downward to ambush its prey, like a silent 30-foot-long torpedo with flippers. And its teeth. They were not the elegant needle-shaped chompers you'd expect a fish catcher to have. Its teeth were thick, robust, and built for crunching through hard shells, which means it must have had some tough prey, probably ammonites. You know, those swirly-shelled mollusks that used to fill the prehistoric seas like bony popcorn? So what you've got is a creature that looked like a sea serpent mixed with a plesiosaur, hunted like a pelican, and ate its lunch like a hydraulic press. Traskosauria was its own beast entirely, a Frankenstein monster of the depths, cobbled together from evolutionary oddities and adapted for a very specific lifestyle in the coastal waters of what is now British Columbia. It may have waited 85 million years for a proper introduction, but now that it's here, Traskosauria isn't going anywhere, except maybe your nightmares. The Antarctic Odd Duck. Way before penguins waddled across ice sheets, and while T-Rex was still biting everything it met, a strange duck-like creature flapped its wings over a balmy Antarctica. Its name is Vegavis ei, a waterfowl so old it might just be the great-grandparent of all modern birds. Chickens, ducks, peacocks, woodpeckers, they might all be able to trace their lineage back to this one bird-like creature 69 million years ago. For crying out loud, VEI witnessed the asteroid that ended the Cretaceous. And what was its response? It shrugged its feathers and kept on swimming. Yes, swimming. The artifact at the heart of this shocking revelation is a skull. The very first Vegavis ei fossil was found in 1992 on Vega Island, Antarctica by paleontologist Julia Clark, but it came incomplete, like a bag of assorted Lego. There was no head, just a pile of bones. The bones suggested waterfowl ancestry, but they were a little too vague. The door was left wide open for scientific arguments, skeptical eyebrow raises, and a lot of bird brain theories. Nothing really happened for the next 20 years. Then came the 2011 Antarctic expedition, which uncovered what had been missing. Scientists in Antarctica found a nearly complete skull belonging to VEI. It was tucked into the frozen ground like Santa lost your Christmas present. Over the next decade, scientists prepared, scanned, and digitally reconstructed the skull. Then in 2025, just a few months ago, scientists revealed the skull to the world. Let's just say it blew the beak off more than one bone nerd. The skull was like that of a modern bird, not a dinosaur-era bird. It had a long, narrow beak powered by strong jaw muscles, ideal for grabbing slippery fish. And unlike early birds that still had more in common with velociraptors than songbirds, Vegavis had a distinctive trait. For example, its upper beak was entirely made from the premaxilla bone, which is a hallmark of today's birds. Pre-modern birds, not so much. They mostly stuck to the maxilla bone like it was going out of style. The bird's impressive schnoz wasn't its only modern feature. The brain shape, revealed through 3D imaging, also looked like something you'd see in today's ducks and geese. Add in powerful jaw muscles and a diving bird feeding style, and Vegavis started looking less like a relic and more like a survivor. So why was this bird, who lived with the dinosaurs, so much more like our birds than like prehistoric birds? According to University of Cambridge paleontologist Juan Benito Moreno, it was surprising to see an incredibly niche ecological feature like a specialized narrow beak so early in the evolution of this animal. Birds today have highly specialized lunch strategies, and so did Vegavis. Only Vegavis evolved its specialized beak millions of years before the other birds got around to evolving at all. And that has led researchers to one very exciting theory. Vegavis EI may have survived the asteroid apocalypse that wiped out all non-avian dinosaurs. It sounds suspect, but listen to the facts. This creature lived in Antarctica when the region was lush and leafy, not the ice block we know today. Being far from the asteroid's impact zone in modern-day Mexico, the ancient bird may have sidestepped the worst of the heat, dust, and falling sky. It may have survived, thrived, and became the grandfather of all modern birds. This could be the Adam and Eve of birds. Still, not everyone's ready to declare the ultimate missing bird link. Daniel Kasepka of the Bruce Museum called it an odd duck, yes, but said that duck-like features could have easily evolved multiple times, once during the age of the dinosaurs and again in our more modern timeline. Either Vegavis inherited its beak from a common ancestor, or it was a case of convergent evolution, where multiple bird lineages independently discovered that bills are cool. It's a really fascinating idea that suggests animals will evolve the same traits no matter what, given enough time. Let's go even deeper for just 1 second. Some suspect that life always evolves similar traits, meaning on hundreds of thousands of planets, there are birds similar to Vegavis. And in 1 billion years here on Earth, even if every bird goes extinct tomorrow, new creatures will evolve the same bird-like features. It's not proven. It's a very rough theory, but it's fun to talk about. Now who's ready to watch some dinosaurs do the two-legged tango? Getting frisky, dino style. Let's face it, prehistoric romance was never going to be pretty or subtle. No candlelit dinners, no poetic serenades under the stars, no prehistoric Barry White on the mammoth bone gramophone. No, prehistoric party time was gnarly. Just 2 pubescent thunder lizards on a lake shore smashing their domes together like hormonal battering rams. And while that may sound like innuendo, it's not. That's literally what they did. They bashed their domes together like 2 rams, headbutting one another to see who can get brain damage first. Welcome to the wild world of Zavacephaly rinpoche, a newly discovered dome-headed dinosaur whose idea of flirting involved blunt force trauma. Scientists are calling it a mating ritual, but I think it's closer to a snuff film. It all began in Mongolia's eastern Gobi Desert, a land of sand, secrets, and spectacular fossils. Deep within the Kirin-Duk Formation, a team of paleontologists led by Sokbatar Chinzorig of the Mongolian Academy of Sciences uncovered what can only be described as the fossilized equivalent of a teenage punk rocker with a helmet fetish. This creature belonged to the elusive family of dome-headed dinosaurs known as Pachycephalosaurs. At 108 million years old, it's now the oldest known member of its kind, pushing back the dome-head lineage by 15 million years. The fossil is from a juvenile, a creature that was barely more than an infant, and yet this baby dino was already rocking a fully formed skull dome. Look, when your entire species is built around cranial combat, you start training young. Pachycephalosaurs are famous for heads so thick, they make NFL helmets look like papier-mâché tiaras. Scientists have long speculated what those bony helmets were for. Defense? Maybe. Intimidation? Also maybe. But increasingly, as of late, the leading theory has changed. The most widely accepted theory now is that such robust domes were used in combat, probably while fighting Joe Sixpack for a girlfriend. New information seems to confirm that heavy heads were used in dating rituals. Males likely rammed heads like bipedal bighorn sheep to win mates, assert dominance, and defend prime lakeside turf. Think of it as a Cretaceous version of The Bachelor, only instead of roses, there were concussions. With a dome fully developed in adolescence, little Zavacephaly was apparently already practicing his Tinder profile moves, one skull bash at a time. Despite the aggression, though, Zavacephaly was a plant muncher, not a predator. At roughly 14 feet long and weighing up to 900 pounds, this dinosaur likely spent most of its day chomping ferns, minding its own business, and occasionally looking up to pick a fight over love or leafy real estate. This is a pretty exciting discovery overall, with huge evolutionary implications. Realizing what the huge heads of these animals were for suggests that cranial combat was essential even in the early stages of evolution, not just for Pachycephalosaur, but for other animals too. It seems creatures of this planet are born with violence in their skulls. Zavacephaly is more than the latest quirky dinosaur to capture headlines. It's a missing puzzle piece that may redefine how and when dinosaurs developed complex social and sexual behaviors. Who would have thought hooking up in the dinosaur age would leave you with a hematoma, a headache, and a new arch enemy? Now that Zavacephaly has strutted into the spotlight, researchers are already planning the next steps. They are hoping to 3D model the biomechanics of dino headbutting. They want to scan more skulls to look for stress fractures and calluses. The researchers suspect that the large domes of Zavacephaly may have functioned like antlers in modern deer, signaling fitness before combat even began. One dinosaur might feel totally emasculated and then go in search of an easier challenger. The tiny tank of the Cretaceous. Most scientific discoveries come after years of planning, funding, and the strategic application of PhDs and pickaxes. But every once in a while, science gets blindsided by sheer dumb luck. And that's exactly what happened in 2013, when a Brazilian research team accidentally stumbled upon one of the oldest, most complete crocodiliforms ever found in South America. They weren't even looking for it, they were looking for sauropods, but ended up with killer crocodile-like monsters that are sure to keep you out of the swamp for good. The expedition rolled into Campo Azul in southeastern Brazil, armed with dreams of finding massive, long-necked dinosaurs. But instead of titanic vertebrae, paleontologist Rodrigo Meloni Santucci found something peeking out of a discarded sandstone fragment. Small, pale fossils were hiding in a chunk of dirt destined for the dump pile. The chunk was moments away from becoming trash, thrown into the already checked pile. Luckily, Rodrigo's fossil sense tingled and he took a closer look. It was one of those moments where your instincts seem to come from the future, or like some divine being taps you on the shoulder. Locked inside that discarded sandstone fragment was something far, far rarer than a mere dinosaur bone. It was the fragmented pieces of a brand new species of Notosuchian, something I think you might not be familiar with. No worries, Notosuchian is a bizarre branch of extinct crocodiliforms that look like what would happen if a crocodile, a mammal, and a box turtle walked into a bar, had too many drinks, and one of them came out pregnant. The creature, now officially dubbed Philasticosuchus scutorectangularis, wins the Cretaceous naming award for sounding like a dinosaur-themed spell from Harry Potter. And while it was indeed a pint-sized reptile, it came equipped with some serious armor. It had strange rectangular armor plates known as osteoderms running down its back like little Lego bricks of prehistoric body armor. Even armored to the nines, our reptilian friend wasn't a very good predator. Scientists suspect it lived a peaceful life, nibbling plants, fungi, or whatever small morsels didn't run away too quickly. Forget the teeth of doom often associated with modern crocs. This creature had an herbivore's toolkit, a jaw full of dental multi-tools. Its teeth were an eclectic mix of shapes, probably due to a condition called heterodonty. It's a rare feature in crocodiliforms where their teeth looked as different as the various ingredients in a bag of trail mix. It was a perfect evolutionary trait for a scavenger, an animal that didn't mind eating plants, trash, corpses, or babies. Nature is brutal, and babies, unfortunately, are usually the easiest snack. Poor kids. The crocodiliform skull was triangular, its body compact, and while the individual found might not have been fully grown, it was still likely a small creature only a few feet tall. Small, but evidently hard to kill. You don't evolve a body made of armored plates unless the neighborhood's especially rough. This discovery adds a fifth known species to the obscure and underappreciated clade of Notosuchians from the early Cretaceous. They were a group of creatures that once roamed the sprawling supercontinent of Gondwana, back when South America and Africa still shared a continental coffee date. Imagine being able to walk from Patagonia to Cape Town. You literally could, though you wouldn't have recognized the scenery. The fact that this little tank on legs has survived in fossil form for 120 million years, only to be rescued from the trash pile by a sharp-eyed scientist, feels like poetic justice, especially considering that this specimen, so complete and well-preserved, became the centerpiece of paleontologist Joyce Carvalho's PhD thesis. It's proof that even small reptiles with rectangular backs and weird teeth can come in handy, and sometimes even change the game. According to co-author Daniel Martins dos Santos, this was a reminder that paleontology isn't always about chasing titans. Sometimes the big stories are buried in the tiniest bones, wedged in the rubble, waiting for someone curious enough to take one more look. So the next time you're tossing out the leftovers, whether it's rocks or research, maybe pause for a second. You might be holding the finger of a 120 million-year-old armored omnivore, or at the very least, a new species with a name that sounds like it could deflect a laser beam. Thanks for watching! After hearing all the crazy traits of these incredible ancient animals, which one stands out as your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and I'll see you soon. Bye!